Hey folks, this is Systemic. Welcome back to the channel. It's been a minute since our last podcast. A lot of scheduling issues and just kind of life and work out in the way. We haven't really had time to squeeze one of these in there in a while. Today we did though. Today's was about video game violence and how that affects people today, guns and gun laws, and that cover things like some more concealed carry stuff, buying firearms in different states, ammunition, stuff like that. Just kind of looking at how the laws in different areas affect different people. Just kind of diving into that. We thought it was very interesting to get into, and Vlad was another big guy here. He is also really big into guns and whatnot, and Vain, who's also now getting back into guns, is kind of hearing different perspectives and whatnot. It was really interesting. But ahead of this is a podcast. If you guys like what you see or hear, please like. That helps us out a lot. Any feedback, good comments, bad comments, let us know. Leave a comment below. And if you'd like to see more of our stuff, please subscribe. And yeah, let me know what you think. And ahead of this podcast, please enjoy. Have a good one. Hello, everyone.
Hi. Do
Welcome.
video games really make people violent? Short answer, no, they don't.
You have any
They should be compared to music or movies. Yes.
Oh, okay. Let's just blow through these then, huh?
Nope, that's just the short answer. That's all. But
uh,
we'll explain. But that's something I just want to get it out right away because I feel very strongly about that. And that no, video games do not make people violent. If anything, there have been cases showing that they can help. Not necessarily. Well, actually, they can help with calming people down and things like that, doing other things. And sometimes, very rarely, helping with certain mental disorders or anything like that. Although it's not taking place of pills or anything.
well, Vlad, how do you feel about this first topic here?
What?
Throw you in here
Making
in the
fun
bit.
of a lot, but
It's not
so
supposed to be this awkward.
no, I know, but it's okay. Okay, so let's just start. So before video games, it was um blamed on music or television as things that would be a source of violence, or it would make people violent from the early days of heavy metal or things that typical American Christians, I guess, would find
Well,
objectionable.
even if you look back even further or like back, I mean, there was book burnings. Like books were
Oh
they were
yeah,
worried about
books.
books were influencing people, and then like the day rock and roll kind of came about, they were worried about that. Like heck, people were even worried about Elvis shaking his knees were like enticing women
Oh
to.
my god, the niche.
I
I
remember,
know.
Satanist.
but that was all things that, like, it was like a generational thing too. It was always a parental figure saying, "Oh, these kids today," or something like that, and that's existed throughout all of the 20th century and even
Hmm.
today. Um, it sort of superimposes like this. Is like, well, I didn't do this when I was a kid, which is honestly just a convenient nostalgia glass kind of perspective on on well, basically being overly reductive in your childhood and then blatantly ignoring everything that was actually bad. Like my parents do this all the time, where it's like, well, things were better back in my day. It's like, really, all of those awful things that I read about in history books were way better, like civil rights movement, all of this stuff on the war on communism, the war on all that was better, or it was really just my parents growing up in an affluent neighborhood and they could just conveniently forget about their lives' troubles, and they like to think that because they have better foresight or something like that, that the world is becoming more violent, even though that's not true at all.
Sounds like an OK Boomer situation.
Pretty much, but
Okay, Boomer.
but that thing about, like, even OK Boomer has existed through every generation. I'm sure the baby boomers said nonsense to their parents about you know like, all back in my day. Well, okay, there. I don't know, Great Depression survivor. I don't know what they called them. I don't know what those generations were called before baby
Well,
boomer. Just because I'm clueless about that.
that's without getting too far off topic or anything, but like with a generational thing, it's like every generation, obviously, it changes. But like back then, it's a bit more cultural accepted to respect your parents, and then as we get older, we start going like, well, our parents don't know crap, so kind of thing. And so I think it started around probably like generation, was it Y or Generation X or whatever? After the boomers, people started kind of digressing from like respecting their parents and acting out more. But do video games, violent games, make people violent? Like, can anyone think of a situation legitimately where someone played a violent game and has made someone physically violent from it? Like,
I think if we not to like go off on one instance things like where, oh, I don't know, you always hear like those singular anecdotes that a media presence likes to report on. A media presence will love it, that it's a buzz topic.
mhm.
But they'll say like, this kid did something really violent and he says he got it from Grand Theft Auto or something like that, and it's like they'll use that as affirmation of the violence
But
when
yeah,
really that's just a one-off case and it's an
Well, yeah,
anecdote.
well, Kiss made people violent too back in the day.
Oh yeah, like
And
this
they're
goes
just
back to
sound.
Kiss
what
the
was
Their
band.
That was
clothes just point
yeah.
to the genitalia, man. Like that's just there's so much in the male physique, and there's just
And they
this
painted
hair
their
everywhere.
faces,
Oh
and
my,
that
and the
one bass player would put
Satan,
blood in his mouth, and
Satan everywhere.
well
Yeah.
that's actually, it's funny that you mentioned Satan because in heavy metal, religious groups would point to that as a singular source of
Yes, they did.
anti-Christian, I don't know how you would describe it. Basically, satanic sort of culture is that these Satanists and heavy metal, or rather, the people who enjoy heavy metal are Satanists or something like that. And sure, there's tons of heavy metal out there that delves deep into that, but it's one of those things where using it as a source of violence somehow. And it's funny that we talk about it because like, what was it in the early 90s? What was it? That guy Jack Thompson, I think his name was, he was consistently blaming video games an increase in 90s violence, which was really just an oversimplification of a greater socioeconomic problem with uh, and I remember just telling my dad, I was like, in the 90s there was a massive crime epidemic. Like, I think 1992 to 1996 was some of the worst years for the US, where um and without being overly political, we point to a number of things politically that influenced this, such as stop and frisk and minimum sentencing laws, the war on drugs, and the tough on crime era of the 90s, where people were very, very affirmative about, we got to stop crime. And genuinely, they probably had good intentions, but there was a massive issue where minimum sentences caused people to go to jail for years for basically non-crimes. And this generation, or rather not this generation, this era of the 90s where violence was so extremely rampant, mostly in poor and impoverished neighborhoods, that people like Jack Thompson, I believe, took advantage of this part where they could blame this violence on a new source of entertainment media, which is violent video games. I mean, what was it? Middle of 1990s. The biggest games right there were Doom. Doom was a big one. I can't remember what else. I knew that Doom was the big hot one because it was one of the more grotesque games at the
Gore.
It was
time.
the most
So
violent.
much body and demons and Satan again.
But that
Pretty
was the one.
much.
What really brought Doom to the forefront of like video game violence was really Columbine, because that's the one. It was Columbine and Marilyn Manson. They were because they found that they were listening to Marilyn Manson, and then that they modded Doom levels to the layout of the school, as kind of like training in a way. They like, well, because of this Doom game and blah blah blah. They just wanted something to blame, but they weren't really blaming one. They weren't ever really blaming the kids. They were saying, well, something had to affect their mind because they're children. They wouldn't do this. They couldn't fathom the fact that uh a young high school student or child could have either mental issues or types of problems to where they would want to actually physically kill somebody. And also that they were doing drugs and they were kind of neglected by their parents. Possibly, and they didn't really blame the parents for, were the parents doing their job as parents to patrol, I wouldn't say patrol, but discipline their kids
Police
and raise
their
them right.
shit.
Yeah. Yeah, police their shit. And it's probably not. There was a lot of neglect. They were, obviously bullied in school and things like that, and they were suffering from problems, but they weren't getting any help. And with that, they lashed out, unfortunately, in a very violent way. But no way does that mean that because they played Doom, it made them violent. Just because they modded the levels, that was their action. That was they did it themselves. They had to do that. The game didn't allow that. It's not like it manipulated their mind to think, oh, because of this game, I can now kill my fellow students. It was the It's always been kind of a political topic, and I won't really say whether it's like a left or right is because I think it's kind of both. They kind of agree on it for whatever reason, but uh, it kind of started back in like the mid '80s with like the parental advisories for songs. Because heck, like uh, what was his name? DJ, or is it but D. Snyder went from Twisted Sister, had to go to I guess the Supreme Court or someplace to talk to politicians and explain like like his pitch that basically their music isn't causing violent, and it's not what's I'm trying to think of the word, but it's not making people violent. It's not telling people to go out and be violent or anything like that. It's either therapeutic or whatever. I forget his exact words, but like that was a very famous moment, and I think it kind of stemmed from that and like the Reagan era. A lot of that, what's her name, Nancy Reagan or whatever. She was like the head of all this stuff, and I think also possibly it wasn't. Didn't she do the war on drugs as well?
I remember, yeah. Similarly, I remember when oh God, who's that? John Denver. The guy who wrote uh, "Almost Heaven," West Virginia. I can't remember what that song is
Yeah.
even.
Country Roads.
Country Roads. That's it. So I remember he had to testify in front of Congress. He has another song called "Rocky Mountain High," and he had to describe. Uh, at the time, it was illegal in the U.S. to write song lyrics about um, drug paraphernalia or that sort of thing. And so he had to he had to basically go on and testify that what he was talking about in his song wasn't the effects of hallucinogenic or paraphernalia of the sorts, that it was a blissful and enlightening thing to see the Rocky Mountains and how much, I don't know, some enlightenment that it brought to him. And I'm very paraphrasing very very badly, but it was that sort of thing. Like, so he didn't want to get ousted in society. He wrote he had to go on and do this testimony to sort of more or less clear the air as a sort of thing. But I think that's what it stems from, is like, two, is that a lot of this, first it was anti-communism, and then now it's not like anti-violence, like you can be pro-violence or something like that. But the next cool thing to blame came to light, and it's almost hilarious in hindsight. It's hilarious, but at the time it was the
Mhm.
big buzz thing of like, oh man, this is a huge problem in modern day society. But like all things, they um conveniently they forgot about the things that they had to overcome in the past as a reference point for the future. And I think that's just how people tended to lean, was to blame the next hot thing for their current problems. And then I think that stems a lot from, like, does this influence gun violence? No, I don't think it does at all. Uh, and I have a different opinion about how gun violence is or how it's defined, but that's we're not quite there yet. I just wanted to lay
Well,
that out.
another couple things I kind of want to touch on is uh, that kind of like with the music and everything, you're talking about like heavy metal and stuff. Before that, because that's why I mentioned rock and roll and kind of like Elvis and all that stuff. The reason why is because rock and roll actually, ever since had a bad start, because I forget his name, of the certain blues player back in the like maybe it was the 30s or something. I forget exactly when it kind of came about, but uh, he would go around basically saying, or had a story that he signed his soul to the devil. You know, so
Right.
because of that, and that's like, well, how did you get so good? It's like, well, I gave my soul away to the devil. Basically, I signed it off or whatever, and I made a deal with the devil. And that's like, ever since then, like rock and roll and anything that stems from rock and roll is now considered Satan music or whatever. That had a bad rap. Anything, because like people want to always point the finger when, especially, and some people can't just accept the fact that like someone they know or love could be like a violent person, just in general. Because I mean, one, it's not really natural in our society, especially today, but even, like 100 years ago, for someone to just walk around and be like, you know what, I really love stabbing people,
Woo!
kind of thing. It's not like they're gonna hide it, obviously, until like they act out or whatever. So, but to say that like, books, movies, games, or any of this entices that feeling more would just be disillusional, or whatever the word is. Just there's a disconnect there that they don't understand. Because I mean, uh, and this will kind of go further into like, gun control and things like that. Like people thinking that, oh, this is scary or whatever, but like if you actually sit down and you're like, yeah, it might be gross to you because it's like, well, you don't get it, whether like playing out like an old person was a like a boomer was to play a violent video game. But if they were to sit down and play it and like look at it, it's not like they would get brainwashed and like, oh, I want to go out and stab somebody now because I played Doom and I shot up a Satanist or Satan devil demon, and now I want to go out and shoot people. That doesn't make any sense. And that I don't. And also, I think it goes even further that they don't realize that like these games, albeit violent, is kind of an outlet for people who are like tend to have like anger issues or maybe violent tendencies that they don't really know how to necessarily control, can use the game to kind of release that energy, so to speak. Not necessarily that it's a negative force or anything like they're actually being violent, but they can release that tension. Like say they're like an angry person, they want to get their anger out, but not do it in a violent or harmful way. They can play a game, get the frustration out, and it could help with a little bit with that. Now, I won't say that is like a problem fixer right there. That's not like the a miracle cure or anything like that. Because obviously, if they have a true mental issue, they should see a doctor and blah blah blah. Never thought Senate had stabbed Caesar got done playing Assassin's Creed. That's a good one, Delta.
But don't you
Um,
think that saying that it is an outlet for anger and aggression in itself sort of supports the argument against or for that game
no,
really
because the thing is,
satisfying that violent need human beings so don't bash your face in with a rock?
well, no, I mean, it's just like anything. Like if someone is stressed out, they can go work out or, pick up boxing if somebody, likes that, and it's an outlet for them, just, and it's a, how do I want to word it? I don't want to say that it's a way of controlled violence, in a way, because I mean, no matter what, like if you take up boxing or anything like that, that is a violent act. But I mean, it's a controlled environment. Or essentially you shouldn't be. You should be learning obedience and things like that, and controlling what you do to, if you when you do go into a fight or spar with another person, and you're not lashing out and physically trying to kill them. Maybe beat them up a little bit, but that's, I mean, that's just the nature of that. But no, I wouldn't say it goes against the argument, because once again, first and foremost, is it's people believe playing a violent video game will make you violent. No, because that there's no like, it's not like indoctrination or brainwashing or anything like that. There, that's where I would say parents need to step up a little bit. Like Delta said, the ESRB has a response to, or was in response to the violence video games, but it's never enforced to the consumer. I would actually disagree with that statement, because it is enforced to the consumer, because you have to be to buy an M-rated game or above, you have to be 18 or older to buy it. But that doesn't stop the parent from buying the game and just letting their child play it. If the parent isn't being responsible enough to what they introduce to their children at a young age, then they're being irresponsible, because I mean, especially young children, infants or whatever, like from the time they're born to about 18, they soak up so much information, and they're liable to just copy what they see, because like the whole monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. Um, with that, if you're not responsible of how you introduce this stuff to them, they might themselves have a disconnect. Like if you don't like try to explain to them and teach them that, one, the video games and movies that you're seeing aren't real. like the stuff you do there, you can't do in the real world, no matter what you do. It's impossible. Now, granted, if you saw a violent video game, yes, you can be violent to another person, but if you're not teaching morals to your kids, you're doing it wrong.
I think it's like the whole back to the okay boomer sort of mentality where like they don't understand what's going on. Like I remember when I was like sub 10 or 9 years old when Halo first came out. Dad got that and we played the shit out of that together. I mean, I don't think he knew what was inside of Halo, the original one, like got it. So
Well, also, I think the beginning it was rated teen, but they changed it to M or something.
I don't I remember it was M because I still have the game case and it was M at the time. At least when we got it.
Uh,
So I don't know, but I don't,
I had to look at my PC because I had a early copy. I think it was originally teen, and they had to change it because there were some different things going on. But that's neither here nor there. Either way, like you're playing it with your dad, so he's seeing it with you, so he can at least, if there was something in there, he could explain to you, or if he notices you that you think that what you're seeing is real, or you can copy that in a way to where it's other than playing around and pretend, you know, hopefully he would instill that moral compass into you, and also trying to bring you back to logic kind of thing, and teach you that you can't do that. To be one, to always respect your fellow man or woman, however you want to put it, and not to be violent, and to learn discipline, like self discipline, so that you can not only uh, or so that he doesn't have to necessarily watch you like a hawk, but you learn how to control yourself and be obedient and not do silly things.
hmm.
But because like another example I can use is that like cartoons. A lot of people have some issues with cartoons. I know my parents, Dexter's Laboratory, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Ed, Edd and Eddie, like everything from Cartoon Network and some of the Nickelodeon shows. My parents wouldn't actually allow me to watch some of the stuff because they're like, those are stupid cartoons. They'll make you stupid. And they literally said that. But look at me now, mom. I'm
Yeah.
just joking. But one of the things I remember, it was actually an older cartoon from probably like 50s or 60s. I forget. It was this one where I forget the name of it, but it's a bunch of different cartoons. It was a giant mashup, and they would be in a race. So it'd be like a bunch of different cartoon villains and cartoon characters all racing in this one big race, and it was like a movie or whatever.
Yeah, I remember that.
But there's one where this guy, one of the villains, he would always kind of fly around. I think his name was like the Red Baron or something, but he would have like some kind of weird hat and these goggles. And one of the things he would do is he pull the goggles out in front of him and then let him go, and they snap to his face, and they'd be good to go. I remember one time, it's gonna be a little embarrassing, but I tried that with goggles,
But
and
that
I
felt great.
hurt the heck out of my eyes. I was sitting there. My mom was in the room with me, and then she wasn't really seeing what I was doing, but I did it, and I was like, ah, like, oh god. All right, and then she's like, what did you do? And I was like, I thought I could snap the goggles like that one guy, and she's like, no, that's a cartoon. You can't do that. And that was one of the moments. Granted, I kind of learned on my own that you can't do some of the stuff you see.
Well, do you think that some of these trends like that, like you see today, like the Tide Pod thing, that was the big deal, right? Or the what was the one where they punch people in the back of the head or something like that? What was it called? It was a game they played.
We
Necking.
resort boxing.
No, it was something. It was something stupid,
There's one
it was like the knockout challenge or something like that. But like people in the metro here in the DC area were like getting clocked in like the metro stations and
Oh,
whatnot.
Oh, I
sucker
don't know about
punch.
that. I thought you were talking about the one where if you're with your friends and they say something stupid, and it's like, oh, that's a neck, and they would take their two fingers, their index and middle, and then smack you in the back of the neck, to like punish you for saying something stupid.
It was like
There's a
knockout.
game we played.
Like, do you think
No.
stupid stuff like that catches on now with social media? Like, is social media taking the places? Like, I mean, games, music, movies are all media, but like social media, is that like the new thing? I guess because now we have
Y-
dumb stuff like that. Like people,
Yes, because that is one. I would separate that from just typical movies, music, and games, because that's usually made by a publisher, and then they obviously can't do certain things because obviously, well, especially now, there's certain rules and things that they have to put in place, uh so that they don't cause too much controversy either in the movie or whatever, and not basically sell enough or be allowed to sell it or whatever. um, I'll say sorry, I'm just catching up on what Delta wrote. But with social media, it's uncharted territory. It's so new, that I feel like not a lot of people know what to do with it. And then like with it being so widespread that especially with people having every person has their own phone and own computer, and it's hard to watch what your or to control what your children take in. That's why with that, like with my sister, I try to I want her I hope that she'll not let her or my niece and her child um give her a phone early. She shouldn't have like some kind of device like that where she can just look up stuff on her own until she is at least mature enough, or at least smart enough to not uh, like just act out what she sees. And I feel like a lot of parents don't realize that by giving them a phone, like a smartphone, that early, uh, can be damaging in a way.
Yeah, I wonder, like, at least for me, and probably all of us here in the chat right now, grew up without phones and devices. Like, I remember not having a computer, access to a computer, like as easy as I do now. Didn't have a phone, none of the internet stuff. I remember like when you hit the wrong button for the internet on your phone, you had to like hit the end call button like a million times because you're afraid of getting charged for that shit. Like, and nowadays kids
Hmm.
just have iPads and stuff shoved in their face, or they have their own like turned off like smartphone. Like they don't have a service, but they have a smartphone to play games and stuff on and whatnot. I'm
Yeah,
kind of curious how that's gonna work out in a couple years when they're like adults and stuff. Because you always hear like the millennial thing, like, oh, they're stuck to their phones, yada yada yada. And I'm like, well, you complain about that, but then at home you give your kid a phone and you kind of start it at home. So it's who is really responsible to correct that behavior? It was a paper I read, kind of asking that for like new middle managers or leaders in the business area today. Is like people coming in now are gonna have these issues them from X, Y, and Z, but no responsibility lies to correct that because you don't want your people on your phone all the time, but at the same time, stuff
yeah.
advances. So interesting.
And it would be tough because um a lot of things to unpackage from that because that is because like I said, it's uncharted territory. There's so much that goes to having so many people having smartphones, and then like Delta said, like to not just give your child a phone, but also you have to be aware of her friends or whoever, like your child's friends, having phones as well when they're hanging out. Um, and do I think there should be like some kind of like class action like thing that we got to do? No, I don't think it should be policed or anything. I think it's just up to the parents to be responsible to not let technology babysit your kids because and then that's why I was saying that they're like sponges. So they're going to act out anything they see, especially at a young age. Cell phone slider with Snake as a game. Yeah,
Exactly.
I remember Nokia's. My parents. I remember their cell phones being Nokia's, and I'd play Snake on
Brick
it.
phones, man.
Yeah, I love those things. But
I mean,
anyway,
even if there is like a regulation thing set for this, gonna be like, oh, make sure you're like 10 years old and click a button, which anyone can easily get the job. I
yeah,
guess that's useless. That's like signing your damn name when you use your credit card on the little POC screen, and then
yeah, it's false security. Which yeah, I've never understood why like sites or anything is like, oh, you can't access this site because if you're it's like 18 or over, and like when's your birthday, and it's like, well, I was born in 1986, and they were like born 2 years ago or something like that. It's like it doesn't work. It's like, what's the point of it? It's literally just a legal loophole that they had to put that there just to satisfy, from getting a lawsuit. And at that point it's on the person accessing the phone, and that's where, in my opinion, it stems to the parents to make sure that they're teaching their children proper, moral code, and to basically just be smart. That's how I would put it. Don't let your child grow up being stupid, or don't let them see something and then not know that whether or not, like, to not like to see something they don't understand, like, violence, because if you that's where you see your child, like maybe they watch like a fight movie or whatever, and you see them playing around, or you hear that they got into a fight at school, and then you ask them, you should at that point, like, hey, like, why are you punching people, like, what's going on? And then like, is it from the movie, like, you know but so that can kind of be where it's like, oh, a game can make people violent, but it's not really making them violent. They're just acting out, thinking that what they see they can do, which I guess that doesn't really make that sound any
That's for
better. But
young people too. But I remember the point Human had or not a second, a minute ago too. We were going to talk about was that we asked for examples where video games people violent. He mentioned that ball tournament, I think Florida, where the guy lost and came back and like shot the place up or whatnot. I mean, I don't think the video game itself inherently made the kid violent. I think he already was kind of violent anyway, because his response to losing the tournament or being kicked out or whatever happened was that. I mean,
I think that's also one of those anecdotes, those one-off odd cases, and I think it's unfair to look at that. Don't at me. Who texted me? Uh, um, it's one of those things where it's one of those one-off things. We don't need to cherry pick to make a point. In fact, cherry picking is not referral in any case. It's kind of like it's not conducive to the point. It's like, oh well, this guy at a football tournament. It's like, okay, you're like you said, he was already abnormally prone to that, and he acted upon that because he lost a video game. And there's those kinds of people are unstable.
I mean,
Yeah.
so
Everywhere.
it's you said that. I pulled up I mean, I know Wikipedia is the greatest source here to look up stuff, but it says 24-year-old professional Madden player from Baltimore, Maryland, yada yada yada. Some like his old names and whatnot, and then he lost a few rounds, started acting weird. But the sentence here says Katz had a history of mental illness and was prescribed antipsychotic medicine, diagnosed with a word I probably can't say, an oppositional disorder, not otherwise specified. So I don't know if that falls in like the mental illness category and the violent thing or whatnot, which makes me wonder too, because like my fiance works with kids, I guess, who are like, I'm trying to say it nicely because I'm trying to be mean, but they're autistic, and some of them are like just seem to be more prone to like being violent or like acting out. Like you do something simple like knock something over and they call crisis where they're like swinging and doing stuff. So interesting to kind of look at sometimes, try and like understand it and learn more about it, because I definitely don't get it 100% sometimes. So
Right.
and that's where I say that it's not really like games and movies and stuff like that. Kind of going on to like the next thing, like does it translate to gun violence and other like gun issues? That I really think that we're dealing with a mental epidemic, like a mental disease epidemic or whatever you want to put it. We have a giant mental issue problem that's going on, and I think a lot of it stems from the fact that social media has basically encompassed a lot of children's lives and just everyone's lives for that matter. And with that, they're being exposed to the world like in such a broad spectrum at such a early age. They don't know how to handle it. That's like you know, young teenagers, like preteens and things like that, are committing suicide because they were either getting socially or internet bullied or whatever, and they think they should live and die by their social media status. It it doesn't that they don't know how to handle that because it's such a great deal of a rejection that they feel like they're all of a sudden become an outcast. They don't realize that like that's not what all life's about and everything like that, and how to handle rejection and stuff. Like the kid that fucking went off on all those people because they lost.
yeah, it's tough, and I feel weird bringing up the autistic thing. Yeah,
Why?
I don't know. I don't want to like have it be misconstrued, or perceived as me being like an a hole about it. Like I'm really not. I'm trying to be an a hole about mental
Well, no,
illness or
because
autism or anything like that. So
well, no, because I mean, you are correct. Because like certain children with autism, they lash out because they get frustrated or something because they don't understand something.
it's like the emotion
Their
regulation
mind
just
works a little
isn't there.
different. Yeah, because my brother-in-law's sister, who now this isn't a stab at mental illness or anything, but she literally is a crazy bitch. But she has her twin. She has three children. Two of them are twins, a boy and a girl, and the boy was born with autism. He has a learning disability with that, but I mean, he's a smart guy. But when it comes to like, so because I think it's like Asperger's or something, like is a combination of things. But he has like little picky things, like his food can't touch, and he has like a texture issue with things. And he's finicky about stuff. And I forgot like what it was. Like there would be times where he would freak out. Um, and my mom was like the only one that knew how to calm him down. And I think she had to like get on his level and be like, "It's okay," and like she would just like hold him or something like that. And like it was something weird that he needed, and then he eventually calmed down. And because she would understand that his the way he in his mind processes the world around him is extremely different to the other majority population. And with that, going back to like children being introduced to things at an early age, like social media and seeing all these things, like the whole Tide Pod example, they think, oh, it's funny because I can do that, but not realizing, well, hey, maybe it's not smart to put a bunch of chemicals in our mouth and either swallow it or even put it in our mouth to begin with. Like, they just like, oh, it's funny because these people think it's funny. Like, oh, hey, I want to be a part of that. And then they think, with so many people becoming popular and famous, so to speak, I use air quotes with that, because it's very becoming famous on social media or through viral videos or doing whatever or YouTube, um, is kind of become like a trend. So because the whole everything's like so saturated. But and I saw some funny the other day, which I might bring up here in a second. But um, a
Like the
lot of
Catch Me Outside
kids.
girl or whatever. That whole thing.
Well, there's that one, which funny enough, uh, I really think the whole thing was a gimmick to boost herself. Like her mom didn't really want control. She just wanted to be on Dr. Phil's show, and she realized she had a crazy child, and then blah blah blah. I feel like some of that stuff is just made up. So some of it might be real issues, like when it comes to those things, but a lot of it is fake. Like example is there's these two people. Do y'all know about the whole licking the ice cream and putting it back thing?
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen a few things of that.
Have you seen a video where a trans woman or something took a sip of mouthwash, swished it around her mouth, and spit it back in the bottle?
Oh, and put it back on the shelf. Yeah, I saw something about that too.
Yep.
Like following along with the ice cream thing.
Well, she
Oh
has
yeah.
a
Sorry.
she boyfriend, and they went on Dr. Phil's show, and they were talking about like how like famous and like, oh yeah, it's funny. We're trendsetters. We're doing is trying to push the boundaries of creativity and blah 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 and trying to set a standard or whatever. And it's like, what are you? No, you're being fucking idiots thinking that you're being popular. And because like Dr. Phil was talking to him, it's like all that shit was negative. Like that they basically admit that one, they're not making any money off of it. Two, even though they're in denial about that, because he's like, "How much money do you make off these viral videos?" And it's like, "We make a lot," but they never had a number, so it's clearly they're not making any money. But one of the guys, I think he's like, "What do your parents think about this?" And one of them was like, "Well, I don't talk to my mom." And he's like, "Well, why don't you talk to your mother?" And he's like, "Well, because she's irrelevant." He's like, "Your own mother?" He's like, "Well, yeah. I mean, like, what if I just like what would I have to talk about her that would do anything for my career?" And it's like, wow.
Yeah, I think on the contra positive, I think or excuse me, negative. Um, the the Dr. Phil and the Dr. Phil show is largely a sensationalist kind of outlet of entertainment, similarly to how the news agencies are, where he benefits greatly by finding the most goofy people he can reasonably get on his show because it gets him more views in a way. So I think he honestly he probably cherry picks hard to try and find weirdos like that.
Well, I imagine people
Um,
probably submit cases to him, and he gets to pick the cream of the crop he wants on the show. I doubt he like has to do the research. I'm sure it's all done for him
oh
when it
yeah, no,
comes to his
I'm
front
sure,
Yeah,
door.
well,
absolutely. I think people are like swimming to. It's like I want to be on Dr. Phil show. I'm so dysfunctional and nonsense like that.
Dr.
Um,
Pimple,
Ooh, those are. I have a love hate with those videos.
the pimple popper.
Yeah.
oh God,
I love them, but like I mean, for me, the trend for that should die off quickly, unless you're some psycho that loves watching oozy bits come out
That's
of
like
people.
there's a guy in Australia who does like like back resets where he like twists you in a certain way and like presses you hard and like you hear your entire spine like crack and whatnot.
Yeah,
Those are like also like they're hard to watch, but you can't stop watching because you
oh God,
uh,
it is strange,
yeah.
but
Oh,
going. I want to kind of like touch on the Dr. Phil thing. Like, I truly believe that he wants to try to help people and find people to bring on the show to help. To I think in his mind, it's to bring light to help others out there that you're not alone, kind of thing, possibly. What's just bad though is that some people are really good at faking it and coming up with weird stuff. Like a good example is these two guys that went on Judge Judy with a fake case about like a car being stolen and not getting money back or whatever, and it was none of it ever happened, but they made it look real, and they didn't come out with it until like a few months after their show, like their thing aired on the show, and they're basically like, yep, it wasn't true, we got on the Judge Judy show and it was easy, and they talk about it. Like that's the only thing I worry about. And what do y'all feel like with that? Because there's the whole thing of like copycats because they want to become popular because they saw like, oh, this person got popular because they were on this show or did this thing, they were, on national television, that I should do something like that. And that's kind of goes to social media, whereas monkey see monkey do, they see this one person do it, they see like, oh, they got like 3 million views, let me do something similar and copy it. Like how, like, do you think shows, especially on TV, should like really bring stuff like that to light?
Like Judge Judy type stuff and Dr. Phil type.
Not necessarily Judge Judy because that's not. I mean, even though it's a popular show, but I'm talking more like Dr. Phil, like where they have like weird people come on the show. Like, do you think that would just make people act out just so that they could get on a show and possibly get, especially like the Catch Me Outside girl or
I
Cash Me
mean,
Outside?
I don't know. I mean, that's probably what, if it's different, it's different enough so it stands out. So I feel like having that need to be different generates these off the wall ideas, and then these weird people kind of come out or whatever. I guess for the sake of
Yeah,
competitiveness, I mean, like finding your niche on like Twitch or TV or whatever, what have you. So YouTube, you get
and
more and more out there, I guess.
yeah, and but with like social media, like that's where I say it should be the parents' job to monitor what their children see, and also make sure that what they're seeing, they either understand what they're doing is either wrong, or whether or not it could be copied, to make a smart decision about that. But to like, how would you, other than the parents trying to monitor what their kids watch, how would you police it? I mean, like on their, I mean, I know there's like child things that you can put out there where they have to enter a code or whatever. Like there's parental passwords or whatever. Um, but do you think there could be anything beyond that? Like, do you think Facebook should up their monitoring maybe in some way? I don't know. To me, that sounds weird, a little weird because Facebook is already doing weird
Maybe
things
the
like that.
government should step in and monitor all of us. Bam.
Yeah,
Oh god.
because I really
That's
don't know like how you would stop that. Other than parents trying to, monitor what their kids do. But like Delta said, like how are you going to stop other people's kids with their phone influence your child? That's why I think it's really, I mean, I guess what I was trying to say is everything stems down to the parents to make sure that they're raising their children right, and that if there's any problems, that they need to seek help for it and not hide it, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
And also not, and as being a parent, you shouldn't really be too hard on your children, try to make it like help them. Obviously, if they need to be punished or whatever, to teach uh like obedience and discipline, but to also not hate you.
Yeah. Um, I think uh, slightly separate but relevant. No. So I think like even things entities like Hollywood, uh, and how they portray firearms, and even in game development, does a lot to both benefit and damage Second Amendment supporters, in that Hollywood creates or wants to create a high profile, exciting movie. And, but I think at the same time, in order to do that, in some fantastical ways, they have to hyper exaggerate in order to make something exciting. And the audience, not really knowing any better, um, they buy into that. It's believable to them. There's very few. I don't. I don't know of many movies or shows that actually get certain firearm uh, certain firearm technicalities correct. It's kind of, sometimes you see it, but sometimes it's like I get this sometimes, like me as a chemist, I sometimes get when like crime scene shows will do odd things like they put up a scanner to something and they don't know what it is, and the scanner tells them, oh, it's this kind of chemical. It's like, that's not how that actually works. It wrecks my immersion the same way that maybe like if you were a computer science major and you were watching some crime scene show or some hacking show, and then the guy like goes through and he's like banging on the keyboard and he's like, oh, I got it in like 5 minutes because he's a computer genius. It's like, that's not how that works. I think the same thing can be said to like, if you are an enthusiast and you have even the basic understanding of how some of these firearms work, your immersion can be broken pretty quickly. If you're, say, sensitive to that. I'm saying, like, I can still enjoy a movie even if it doesn't get the right things correct. But I sometimes will see in like even in police shows or something like that, or like even at Hollywood action movies, it's one of those things where what is it? It's one of those funny things where the guy has a pistol and he cocks the hammer on the pistol, thinking that'll give him like an advantage or something like that. It's like, like those silly things like what is it? Steven Seagal, I think it was. There were some really stupid instances where he would he would have a pistol or an enemy would have a pistol and he would cock the hammer, and somehow that it was just weird. Or like, oh, I remember now. It was like he had a 1911. Now, if you don't know what a 1911, everybody knows what a 1911 is, but the way it works is that it's single action only. So you have to have the camera cocked. But then there's like some funny things where a guy will draw a pistol and the hammer's down, and I see that, and it's like, how does it fire? Yeah, it's like it's little goofy things that I'm. It kind of like, it's dramatic effect. Yeah, like Delta said, it's dramatic effect, but it's like, it's also weird. Like, how do you like, or even sometimes like when the slide is forward or something like that, the guy will pull the trigger. The hammer won't fall, but it'll make a clicking noise or some nonsense like that. Sometimes it's goofy. I don't know how to describe it. It's like,
or like they're reloading. They don't reload and they like blow through like 100 rounds. And you're kind of counting in your head like, that's probably 10. That's probably 20. It's probably 105.
So,
like
basically, what I'm understanding is that we need more John Wick movies, basically.
Kind of.
But see, their goal was so good with that.
John Wick, I don't think gets it right either. I think like Hollywood, like when Hollywood says like, oh, what was it? Far Cry got this wrong. Where you can find an AR-15 in game, but the AR-15 is fully automatic, and it's like that's not right. Or like how they try and portray American gun culture as everybody has automatic weapons. Like, no, these are actually extremely rare. Like seeing a fully automatic firearm is sort of like seeing a rare exotic car or something like that. Like it's one of those things that, no, you can't just walk into a store and buy a fully automatic machine gun.
I mean, it's not dramatic though. It's not. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, you can, but like, it's not going to happen. And little funny things like that. And I think like, what is it? When bank robbers rob a store and they're all running ARs and they're all fully automatic. I'm like, okay, it's a bank robber movie. I'm not going to get upset and lose my shit over it. But it's like, they try and portray this as it negatively affects the gun culture in that it pits people like me, you, or any kind of enthusiast as some kind of nut, I think, or they hyper exaggerate to the way that people get really, I don't know, reactionary about certain things, and it's sort of like, oh well. And I think this is a really complex topic. It's hard to encapsulate it all, but it's like they don't learn the way that it actually is, and then it's like, okay, if you teach them now, they're like, oh, they're pleasantly surprised or something like that on how little they either actually knew, or they find it fascinating that these things are different. It's like, well, I took some friends a couple months ago to a Sporting Clays event. Now, like, for those who don't know, Sporting Clays is simply around this property at its gun club. There's these machines. They throw two clays, and you have to shoot both clays at the same time. That's basically what it is. Skeet shooting, yeah, but it's not skeet targets. They're just clays of different kinds. There's birds, there's rabbits, there's everything. And those are just different.
Shape of those?
No, not in the same shape, but they're called that. Like, so a rabbit is just a clay disc that bounces along the ground. Like if you take like a frisbee and you roll around the ground, and it hops around the ground, that's called a rabbit. or sometimes they'll have pigeons, and pigeons are a certain kind of clay. It's not in the shape of a pigeon. It's physically it's a round disc, but it has a certain.
I mean, I know what a clay pigeon is. 'Cause I used to buy clay pigeons, and I had my own skeet shooting machine that I would step on and like poof, shoot
Oh
'em.
yeah. Well, there's different kinds of clays, and they're all called different things. Some are called pigeons, some are called birds, some are called yada yada, and they're all different sizes, so they fly differently, or they fly faster, or fly slower. The point is, a lot of people had never actually put their hands on a firearm, and so one of the things that we had to walk through is walking through. It's like, hey, this is a gun. This is not like Hollywood nonsense. This thing does not, operate like you think it might. So you have to like sit down and pay attention. We go through the four rules. We go through the four major rules of firearm safety. No matter what, when you're holding this, you don't point it at anybody. You don't load it before you're ready. There's very strict rules, and it's like you have to realize that this is a fun game to play, but this is not a toy. You see what I'm saying? And so like
Yeah.
you walk through these
Is there
things.
like a safe zone where ammo is not allowed next to the gun?
Oh yeah, pretty much like where we would walk around this property. It comes in a big circle, and you would walk around, walk to a different station where there's some different things. And so one of the things is like you have to carry. I have a belt, so a belt that has like a little pouch, and I have a bunch of shells in it. And some people are like, well, they think like, oh, some people think stereotypically that all shotgun shells are buckshot, or they might know of slugs. Like, no, these aren't. This isn't buckshot. This is called birdshot. And you walk through them throughout because they're fascinated by it, and it's like the level of explanation. And I think that a lot of people, what they don't get from these movies, not to the discredit of the movie, is that they get an inaccurate, purposefully hyperinflated version of how guns work, because that's just the way it sort of is, I guess. I don't know how else to say it, but I think it also gets people interested because now they know that it exists and they either want to get involved, but
What's like
it's just,
if you
yeah.
Hollywood uses it as like a dramatic effect 'cause it's a gun, so instantly there's like a stigma because you said gun. Second part is dramatic effects, so it has to be something crazy or something like out there that causes damage, and like people want to watch that. But then again, too, like kind of going off that, like I was talking to Vain earlier before, and we were talking about like Lucas Botkin from T-Rex Arms and whatnot, and like he does a lot of competition shooting and whatnot, but he's super fast and really good, but he practices a lot, he knows a lot about it, so people are interested in doing that. But like once you sit down and go through like how things actually work, it's like a whole new world, only because they're only shown the end product of all the years of training and practice, and all of this stuff results in it looks cool, whatever. He's fast, he's really accurate, and he has precision shots and whatnot, but you get down to like the fundamentals of it, that's like a whole new world to them. So
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and you
absolutely.
can't just pick up a gun and be like that.
my favorite
Yeah,
videos to watch are like when you have people like, I don't know if it's a Crowder thing or not, but I forgot who I used to watch when I was younger, when I first got into shooting, was that they would
The
take
two girls. Yeah, that's Steve
they would
Crowder.
take anti-gun people out there, and they say, hey, like thanks for agreeing to come out here and try this with us, because they would never have tried a gun before, but like, oh, anti-guns are evil, they're scary and big and loud, and like, okay, yeah, it's a machine, it can be loud, it may be a little scary, but it's not that big of a deal, like we'll show you
And then
why.
anybody can go and pick up a gun that day, and walk out easy peasy, no background.
No, it's more like they go to the range and shoot the gun, and they find out, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. I learned a lot about how guns work and like the process to own a gun. I feel better about guns knowing now what I know, what I did know before, I know now, and I also have done it, so I can say I did it. It's like trying new food. Like, oh, I think sushi's nasty. We had some before. No, you'll try. Oh, it's actually fucking good. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah,
here we
Oh
are.
yeah, the same
not
sort of
until
thing
you
is
try it.
when we're not trap shooting, where we sometimes we're just on like a regular range and we're just shooting paper. Um, Everybody that I've
You mean
taken
not
out,
people? What?
yeah, every time I take somebody out, they're always fascinated by they're always fascinated by it, and I've never had a negative experience where it's like, oh, I shot the gun, but I just don't like this. I don't want to do this again. It's like I've never had one of those experiences. I probably will the more people I meet, but never before have I had. And I like to the way I like to do it now is what I would do is I would slowly work people up different calibers. So I would start off with a dinky little 22, and it's like this is
Hey,
probably one of the
don't knock 22.
Hey,
no,
it's a good starting gun. That's a good starting platform.
comparatively.
22.
Well, I call it. Yeah, well, I call it dinky. I don't call it a BB gun.
It is like a plinking thing. It's like
Yeah.
it's not necessarily derogatory in a 22 cents.
I don't
I know,
call
I'm
it.
making a joke.
Yeah, but yeah, I call it dinky compared to the rest of my collection. I don't call it. I don't call it weak, and I don't call it. Okay, dinky could be synonymous for weak, but I don't call it uh, non-lethal. I never call it weak. I never really call it that. Oh, this is. I usually just call it. It's like, hey, this is one of the smallest, cheapest, easiest ways you can get into this for like a max of like $300. You have a firearm. You can buy 100 round, like $100 worth of ammo, and you'll have more than enough to do everything that you could possibly want to do. And if you're more interested, you can obviously go off and buy something else. But so we work our way up, and I changed it recently where I used to own an AR where so I would start off with 22, then I would work up to a 9mm out of a pistol caliber carbine, and then I would make the skip. I would skip straight to my 30 caliber, and I have an M14 in 30 in a 308, and it's much more massive. And
A true M14?
no, it's an M1A, but for all intents and purposes, people see it and it's like, oh yeah, people see it and they say that's an M14. It's like, well, it's actually an M1A, but let's not worry about that. or like when people say it's like, oh, you have an AK-47. It's like, well, it's not an AK-47, it's an AKM, but let's not worry about that. So what I'll do is we'll make the jump from 9 to say, yeah, like we'll make the jump from like the 9 to like my SKS, which is 7.62 by 39. That's not as big as the 308, but it's in that realm. And then the last gun I'll actually show them is the AR, because I think a lot of people, when they see the AR, or hear the AR, they think like, oh, this is, for some reason, I don't know why.
It's a assault rifle.
Oh yeah, I
oh my god, that one.
That's literally it, though. That's literally it. They hear that, it's like, oh, this is one of those guns. It's like,
exactly.
Well, actually,
that's what they say too. It's one of those guns. It's one of those evil and demon things.
You have to like walk them through. It's like, hey, listen, you just shot the M14. That fires a bullet that is 3 times the mass and is flying at the same speed. Objectively, that gun is significantly more powerful than this AR. And you have to show them, like, I put the little bullets on the table. It's like, okay, here's a 223. Here's an AR. This is what the AR shoots. Here's the M14. This bullet is massive. It's like 25% taller. It's a lot wider, and you have to tell them, it's like, this bullet, the physical bullet, is 3 times the mass. For shooting a 55 grain bullet, I'm shooting a 100 and so what do I like to shoot? 168 grain bullet. That's a lot bigger, and it's flying the same speed. And you have to walk them through. It's like, hey, this is how it works. This, and you dispel it. You dispel the myths behind it. It's like, no, you can shoot the AR. You'll believe it. Believe it or not, this is actually a very mild gun comparative, and it gives them a different perspective on how the AR ranks versus other guns. Because I have even larger guns. I have 300 Win Mag. I have 338 Lapua rifle, and we usually never get that far because those are really expensive. And I don't like.
Yeah, you don't want to blow those on people like that. You want to give them some enthusiasm like that. I mean, it's like, I think Paul and I went to the range. Paul is the other regular here, for those who don't know.
Chief.
Yeah, Chief. And so we took my fiance and our couple friends. One works in like a medical field, the other one works for the FBI in some capacity. And the FBI lady had never shot a gun before. She's like, I want to get involved in this because this is something I'm around at work a lot, but I've never shot a gun before. Will you take me? And we went there and showed her, but we went up from like, we started handguns, which I wasn't really about, but of course, looking at a handgun to someone who's new to guns, never shot a gun before, compared to like an AR or we had like an M1 carbine there, so that was cool to shoot too. But like, just the difference in size, I guess, alone scared them off from rifles, so they wanted to shoot handguns first, which to me is more, I guess, shocking for someone who's new, because it's more recoil. You have to do more to control it. Or a rifle, it's just stuck to your body and it goes off, and you're like, okay, great.
Oh yeah,
like, yeah. So I mean, they did that, but like, it was just amazing to see people. Like, I mean, just kind of like, this girl was afraid of it completely, and then going through like the steps and working your way up, like you said, Vlad, like they're all over it now. And now I get texted every so often, hey, let's go shoot. Hey, let's go shoot. I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? So it's interesting to see people change their minds about stuff like that and see the fun part, because she was like kind of logically approaching it, saying, okay, like I know what this does to like things and people, paper, whatever. Like I know it's bad, or it can be bad if someone gets shot with this. That's kind of why like I'm afraid of like the power kind of deal. But at the same time, too, the trade off is okay. Doing this is fun though. I like shooting and practicing at the range and whatnot. So it's pretty neat. So
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people are just so used to the Hollywood magic in the video games that they think it's a lot different. And but even though that the real thing is actually a lot more tame and controlled, that doesn't dispel their interest in it at all. It's very enjoyable, I think, when you can have a pleasant conversation with somebody where it's sort of gloves off, no nonsense, and you can walk them through. It's like, hey, this is what gun culture is about. It's not about the violence. It's never been about the violence. And
It's all about safety, really.
yeah,
absolutely, safety is actually, it's like, well, the first thing every time we pull in to the range, there's a big stupid sign on their fence that says, "Don't bring loaded guns here." They don't want you to bring a loaded gun to the range. You think that you would, but no, it's like, we want you to load the guns here. Everything is positive action where you have to actively do everything in a very controlled manner. And it's one of those things, like, and one of the things I like to say is, like, this is a machine. It's a tool. You The machine or tool will only do what you tell it to do, right? So,
Oh, you mean to tell me guns don't kill people? People kill
well,
people?
that's sort of like, I think
whoa,
people
Oh,
stereotypically
mind
will default.
blown.
Yeah, I think people will stereotypically default to those things where in their mind they'll say, like, "Oh, well, it's the gun's fault," or something
I
like
mean,
that. It's like,
even
well, no.
even in those cases though, if you follow like the proper rules, like these things don't happen. Like I think the one I always refer to the most is like the most like impactful to me in my learning anyway, because I've been shooting for over a decade now. But like some guy went hunting with his M700, left it loaded in the bag or something like that, and he put it down on the table when he got home, and it went off, and it went through his window, crossed the street, hit two girls, like penetrated one, hit the other behind her, killed one, or he killed both, but one died sooner than the other did, of course. But all that could have been avoided had you just unloaded the gun when you were done with it. I get you're hunting, but like when you're
Oh
not
yeah,
hunting, you're not going to use it soon. Like you're not walking in the woods looking for a target. You're just
and
at
that's
home.
that kind of negligence that I can never. You know how, like, if somebody says something misinformed or uninformed or frankly stupid, sometimes you can get down on their level and you can understand where they're coming from. But in that kind of negligence, I just don't know how to fathom where you actively did something. You loaded the rifle, you went looking for game to take, and then when you come home, why isn't your first thing to unload it? It's the first thing. I genuinely don't know. And it's not even like about storage. It's not even like, oh, open your bolt, put the gun in the bag. It's not even procedural like that. It's that I physically don't forget the fact that I loaded this gun. And it's like, it's very obvious. I know, I don't forget. I've never forgotten that I have ammo in my gun. And that's
Well,
like,
Well, I guess even like when you're check, like at least for like switching gears slightly to just like defensive carrier like guns, whatnot. Like there are guns in my house that are loaded to a certain point, and I say that as in they're different states, like chambered or not, or there's a mag in there with rounds on them. But like I know each gun state. But even though too, like doing like checks to make sure, like you pick a gun up, you always look anyway, just to because you're taught to look and make sure you understand the state of it.
mhm.
Even though you treat it always like it's loaded anyway, you want to know. So if I pick a gun that I know is loaded, I'm still gonna do a little check and go, okay, yeah, there's something there. Just to you
Or
know,
just make sure there's nothing there. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, just to reaffirm the point. I always laugh at myself because like, I know what this is, but this is here to save my ass for the one time that I don't look or something stupid like that. Even though you follow the rules off, you're fine, but you should still always know. But it's just it's redundant, and that's I guess what I'm trying to get to is the culture is about redundancy and whatnot and safety. But there's the counterculture, because guns are evil and whatnot. So I feel like there's like this culture war going on between like the perception of guns from you know left side or right side, or group A thinks like, okay, there's inherently evil. We will not talk to you about this at all. We think this. We're stuck in our beliefs. Bye. And then group B is like, okay, well, no, it's a safety thing. Defense thing. Rights and all that stuff too. So it's
Well,
a stuck thing.
oh
well,
yeah, like,
like Delta was saying, because the problem is to convince people that are against guns that never tried a gun to understand, like to try to get them to learn it, because they just think, oh, it's evil, like you said, but so they're just gonna be like, whatever, I don't need to learn it because I already know it's bad. But they don't, if once, like Crowder would do. He would get anti-gunners that would have an opinion about it. It's like, hey, well, there's a gun range down the road. Let's, you want to go check it out. I could teach you some firearm safety and things like that and what it's all about. And they go in and they find out like, hey, it's actually not that bad, and that you can't just go out and get a gun willy nilly, easy peasy. Like there are background checks and things you have to go through, and especially even more stuff if going getting silencers and other stuff and like tax stamps and waiting times and blah blah. Um, but what was the thing you said earlier that I was trying to remember? Ooh, it went by so
Sorry.
fast. No, it's fine. Because like oh, like that's why, in my opinion, I think it wouldn't be such a bad idea if it was mandatory. Everybody would learn about guns. There's like have some class, just like I think it should be mandatory that everyone, no matter who you are, should go through a driving course and learn the ins and outs of all driving rules and things like that, and have an instructor be there with you the entire way, and that you have to take like tests and do like extensive like I don't really want to say training, but learning, because I feel like that with driving as well as gun control would help people be a lot more safer instead of being like some kind of action hero wannabe guy and go around doing stupid shit, or people thinking that, oh, this is a terrible thing and that we need to ban it all because it's evil when it's actually not, and to learn that it's actually a lot safer than what people make it out to be, and things like that. I feel like that would really help people understand like the dangers and everything of it, that it's every legal or law abiding citizen would take the chance to be safe about it first and foremost. And I do think it's like the negligence of like the guy carrying a loaded gun or not loading it. Like if you're done with a gun and you're not really planning on using it anymore, other for the day or the night or whatever, if you're at the gun range or whatever, always unload it. The entire thing. There's no sense of keeping any bullets in it, unless you're going to use it later. And that would just make more sense. With that, there's a little anecdote story about because I've heard horror stories and things of like or funny things going on at pawn shops here in Georgia. That one of them, Moss Pawn and Gun. I'm pretty sure y'all know Iraq Veteran 8888 on YouTube. Anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, their pawn shop, Pawn and Gun. Uh, uh, they would do a thing where obviously there's a sign on the thing that says "Don't bring any loaded guns." People would come in selling the gun or trading in or whatever, or questions about it. And the first thing they say is it loaded? And you're like, no. And the first thing they do is they rack it back and look at it, and there's a bullet in the chamber. And they're like, okay. Well, what they do is they unload it, take the one bullet that was in the chamber, and they put it in a jar, and they hold that's their
Oh
bullet.
yeah.
They take those bullets and they leave them. And so many people would neglect that one rule to one not carry a loaded handgun or even check, so much to the point where after 1 year, I think they had a 5 gallon bucket of the bullets they kept from those loaded chambers. And I feel like if more people would take the time to actually learn gun safety and be like more knowledgeable about it, like shit like that might maybe not so much like it wouldn't like fix the problem entirely, but it would at least hopefully reduce the amount of idiots in the world.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
people still are required to take driving courses and whatnot, I think, for the most part in the United States, but even then, you still have bad drivers, so training, you still have bad people. Not bad people in the sense of bad guys, but like people who suck at safety stuff.
Yeah, well, with like driving though, as a kind of a side note, kind of trying to compare because they're both dangerous. I mean, they're both gigantic tools, or at least the car is a gigantic tool that you roll around in. It's basically just a giant metal death trap if you don't know how to use it. Um, the thing is though, like the extent of driver safety, if you're like 16 or I think 17, I forget exactly when you can go through driver's ed or you have to take driver's ed at a certain age, but once you're 18 and up, driver's ed's out the window. Like all you have to do is go in, take a test, and then you're done.
I think it's
You
a
pass that
state-run
test.
thing too, is because it varies by state, right? So
Oh yeah.
Does it?
it's kind of annoying, but
Well, yeah. So like your driver's licenses are regulated at a state level, for the most part. But
yeah.
yeah. So like, I know that there's a common issue, and it's more common than I'd like to, you know, it's kind of embarrassing, but it's not. But it's like I don't know how do you describe it. So there's been a few times, notable times, where in the past year I maybe had 3 instances where somebody has been at the range. They went through the whole thing of buying the gun, and even in their pistols. So for those that don't know, New York State is probably one of the most one of the most heavily regulated states on managing pistols and pistol permits.
I was
And
gonna
it's
say,
very,
we should compare that. Like you're New York and me in Virginia.
oh yeah, so like in New York, you have to do a lot to get your pistol permit, and along the way, you have to take a quote unquote 5 hour safety course. However, in my experiences of walking through this safety course, the actual course itself is has very little to do with safety. There's a state mandate as to what can be in the course, but however, the different types of firearms or the different types of actions and functionalities or safeties is very lackluster. Mostly the courses are very introductory in the sense of, here, this is your bullet, this is how a bullet works. Here's a gun, this is how your gun works, right? However, it very much fails to inform people that not all guns are the same. Not all guns have safeties or trigger safeties. Some guns are not drop safe. Some guns are not, and drop safety is a nuanced thing, but like it's not. It's one of those things that a lot of people don't know. There's a lot of critical things that are not taught in this course that really should be, and mostly the course is about basic firearm function, um, certain laws and storage laws. So New York has, it's controversial, but like New York has some storage laws, but there's a lot of exceptions and stuff like that. But
What's the law?
well, so currently, basically the new law is as of like this past summer, if you have a 16-year-old child in your house or younger, you have to keep your guns locked up and unloaded. And obviously that differs because in New York City, if you have a gun in your apartment or in your house or in your dwelling, you got to have, the gun must be unloaded and it must be in a case. It must be locked in its case in a safe, and you cannot keep the ammo. And so New York State is, or New York State and New York City are very different things in terms of the pistol permit process. Similar in getting it, but the laws are just so much more different and esoteric that it's very, sometimes it's difficult to keep up.
Mhm.
And so this, getting back to the safety course actually has very little to do with actual safe handling outside of the basic four rules. And the reason why I bring it up, because in the past year, there's been like 3 instances where somebody has asked me, it's like, hey, where is the safety on this Glock? And for those that don't know, there are no external manual safeties on a Glock. The only safeties that exist are the ones that prevent it from, if you drop it, it's not going to go off. The Glocks are drop safe.
Yeah.
However, there are no safeties that prevent the gun from going off, through a manual switch. Like if you own a 1911, 1911s typically come with thumb
Locked
safety.
in cock.
Yeah, the thumb safeties that you can actuate, you can turn them on, and the trigger
grip
doesn't
safety.
work. And it's one of these things that it's like, this has happened a little bit too often. Granted, it's only 3 times in the past year, but it's too often to the point where it's a little bit like, how did you buy this pistol and they didn't tell you that it didn't have, or not like they didn't tell you, but how didn't you know, or how didn't you learn that this thing does not have
That's
safeties
another
on
thing.
it?
If they're asking you and they already own the gun, why didn't they ask as soon as they picked up the gun, looking at it, trying it out before buying? Like,
You might
Yeah,
not have known. Like
external
it
safety.
sounds like this person doesn't have the knowledge required to ask the question at the time of sale. So that's why they're
Yeah.
asking you now. It
And
sounds like they got the gun and then looked at the internet and said, "Oh, how do I use this thing? Like, what do I learn?" And they hear, "Oh, safety. Oh, what the fuck is that?" And then they ask questions. So
Yeah.
yeah, and it's one of these things that like the safety course that they had to take to get this pistol permit did not do them any favors in telling them that many guns are kind of like cars in the way that they all work the same, but they all work differently.
yeah, that's fair.
And it's one of those things like, if you go to a dealership and you hop in a car and you're like, oh, how do I hook up my Bluetooth? It's like, well, hey, you got to follow this menus. Here's this, here's that. How do I turn on my other basic function? It's like, okay, here it is. Here's a compartment just in case you know. And it's like, they teach, not like they teach you like they're supposed to, but like you have to learn how to basically get to all the functions of your car. That doesn't really happen in a place of New York State, which touts itself politically to be a very safe and gun safety aware state. It's actually it really sucks that it's very much not. about safety at all. And the fact that they make these people jump through these hoops with the pistol permit process, where basically you have to get 3 people that you know to vouch for you. They all have to write a letter of recommendation. You then have to take a safety course, right? And then afterwards, you'll get a letter from your county clerk's office that says, "Hey, you can proceed with the rest of your things. Go ahead and apply." And the level of complexity that they make this process, which sounds simple, when I say it, but it's very complex when you get down to it, because there's no real laws governing, even at the county level, of how they're supposed to do it. There is as a structure, but not as a detail oriented thing. So, like, when you fill out your application, you're not allowed to make copies. You have to get everything notarized, which I don't know why you have to get everything notarized. You can only use blue ink. You can't use black ink. Or no, excuse me. You can only use black ink. You can't use blue ink. That screwed me up once, where somebody signed their paper. One of my references signed my paper in blue ink, and the police officer at the station said, "No, I can't take this." And it's like, well, why can't you take it? It's because, and he made up some nonsense like legal documents have to be done in black ink, which I know is crap, because I know that when I was doing like my driver's license, or doing FOIA exemptions and stuff like that, it's I did all that in various colors. Who cares? I know not to do things in red ink sometimes, but like blue ink's not allowed. Or then later you have to write a letter to the judge. The judge you have to write it in such a way that it's got the right legal header. It has to address the correct judge. Otherwise, it's going to go to a different judge. It's all nonsense. It was such a
That
rigmarole.
It's just to
so-
own the gun, right?
This is just to get a permit so that you can own a gun. And that was the most infuriating bureaucratic process I've ever gone through. Honestly, like it's I genuinely, and the reason why they do it, not to get political, but they do it because they don't want you to do it. They want you to give up. They want you to stop and not complete this extremely arbitrary and tedious process. But
The thing is, once you get the permit, do you have to? Is there an expiration date?
no, there is now. So 5 years from when you get it, you have to re-register.
So you have to go
Not
through all that
re-register, but
rigmarole
recertify.
again.
No, you don't have to do all the paperwork. You just have to go to the clerk's office, and you have to write down all your serial numbers on all your pistols. Now,
Oof.
with the way, and it's all registered too, which I think is just another load of nonsense, because currently the papers and the registrations are kept on the county level. So it's one of those things that if, say, pretend for a moment my gun gets stolen with a certain serial number, but they go off and they use it in a crime all the way up in a different county in New York State, because the registrations aren't centralized, and they won't be until I get my things recertified, where basically all my pistol permit serial numbers go to the state and they keep them in a database for 5 years, is utterly useless. Because if I buy a gun year 1 and it gets stolen, and then it won't be found until year 6, basically, I go to recertify, and they're like, "Oh, that serial number, yeah, no, that gun got picked up by some other county years ago." And it's like, it's so frustrating, because all this registry nonsense has not done a single thing for anybody other than create so much headache and so much frustration, that it's one of those things like, yeah, if I ever do get out of New York State, like systemic, if I go down to Virginia and I establish residency, of course, and the first thing I'm going to do is like, oh, I can just go in and buy a handgun, and no one's going to blink an eye.
Yeah, I was
You
gonna
know,
say my process is way easier across the board.
Well,
Oh
what,
yeah.
what-
Just
good
one more.
question.
Just one more thing is that to get that pistol permit, I had to pass a background check preemptively, like not like a 4473, like a gun background check, but some background check that the sheriffs do. And then when I go to pick up my pistol after buying it, taking my receipt to the county clerk's office, getting it added, they give me a receipt saying it's good to be added to your permit. I take it back to the gun shop. The gun shop still has to have me fill out a standard background check for the gun. And it's like, and on top of that, the federal stuff has just kicked in. And if we ever learn about somebody who lives, like, in our friend group, who lives in New Jersey, and they happen to be, a gun nut, I want to hear them tell how hard it is to get a pistol down there, because New Jersey is even more weird. just by
Good lord.
Yeah, I don't like
What,
that.
what's
Sounds
your
crazy.
process?
My
Specifically?
process? So
Yeah.
all the guns I have bought in the state of Virginia, which is another reason why I left Maryland, or the main reason I left Maryland. I walk into the store, I say I want to buy this gun. They say, okay, you run a background check real quick, we'll get back to you in 30 minutes. I walk around the store and look at shit and be bored, and then they all say, hey, you passed, great, here's your gun. And it's registered to my name, so of course they say, okay, a gun, whatever, is owned by Mr. So-and-so, so if it is picked up, okay, yeah, it's traceable to me, or like,
Yeah.
I bought one of Paul's guns, so it's linked to him, but the state law in Virginia is secondhand private sales is okay, so as he tries not to do anything stupid with it, so I'm not going to get in trouble and get him in trouble or something like that too. So there's that. The process I had to take to get my concealed carry permit was I didn't have to take a class. There is a class of something that you have to take, saying you have formal training. You have to prove that you know what you're doing with the gun, and then your identification and whatnot, and then you send it to the clerk for your county, and then they send you a permit. So like a little, not really a loophole, but a sort of workaround is there's like an online thing. You do the test online, read through the course, and then you pass in like 20 minutes. You get a certificate, and you punch that in with your package, and you get your permit. That was kind of silly because you don't really get any training out of that. So I took an in-class course, and it was more so to go over the laws against like owning a gun and shooting at range versus like concealed carrying it with you, the laws regarding like castle doctrine, stand your ground, how like we have those laws in Virginia, don't have those laws in Virginia. It's like a quasi version, so like there's still a degree of like duty or life-threatening situations in order for you to force stuff like that. So, but it was all over in like a week. So, and it was like,
oh man,
go to a class, send my stuff into the sheriff's office, the clerk, whatever, and then they sent me back my permit in like a week.
Yeah, mine in my county is considered a very friendly county towards guns. That took me about 3 months. Other counties sometimes take shorter. Like I know that the neighboring county to me has been known to issue it in less than 6 weeks. I know that Albany County, right next door to me, is known to take 9 to 12 months. New York City takes 2 years. And these are just common numbers that I hear people. It's like, oh, you live in Albany. How long did that take you to get? It's like, oh, it took me like 15 months. I applied way back ago. I've been waiting ever since. It's like, wow, shit. And now in that whole time, if you don't have a license, you're not allowed to touch a pistol. That's another caveat. So the actual law stipulates that you cannot touch a pistol without a permit. Or excuse me, the law says possession, but since the possession isn't defined in any way, it's very nefarious. There's no laws against guns, but I've been to there's no laws against ammo, but there has been a few times where I've gone to a store. I've asked to buy pistol ammo, like specifically 9mm, not necessarily for my pistols, but for say my pistol caliber carbine, which is a rifle. And that's very common where people who don't have pistol permits will sometimes buy pistol caliber carbines because, well, they're rifles and they don't
You don't
need
have
a
to go through the
permit.
process of the permit, right?
Exactly. So what they'll do is they do that, but sometimes depending on the store you go to, the store will say, "Oh, you want 9mm pistol ammo? Do you want, or excuse me, do you have a pistol permit?" And they'll be like, "Well, no," and then the store will refuse to sell them, even though they have a rifle that is able to shoot 9mm. Conversely, that doesn't really happen with 22 long rifle, which suffice it to say, it was long rifle, but there are pistols that shoot 22, and there are rifles that shoot 22. But that same controversy doesn't happen there. Now, granted, that's just like a nuanced store policy, but that's how afraid people are of the law. And I find it's unlike bringing friends to the range and showing them a good time, and they are very appreciative and they leave well more informed. Having a discussion about the law itself is very difficult because I think a lot of people who are proponents of gun control don't actually know, and I'm going to say this with great confidence, don't know anything about the laws that are already on the books. So one of the things was is
Especially
that
state to state.
oh yeah, even state to state. Somebody asked me like, "Oh, you have a 20-inch barrel on this AR. Why is it 20 inches? Why isn't it say 10 inches?" And it's like, well, the law says I can't have a barrel shorter than 16 inches. And they're like, oh, well, I didn't know that. Or they didn't know that if I have a pistol, I can't have a stock on it because that makes it a rifle. And both in New York and at the federal level, there are regulations on that. Now there's certain goofy ones where if you can build an AR that does not have a stock, then it's a pistol or some nonsense like that. Now it's not that weird, but little things like, oh well, can you do a trigger job on your SKS? It's like, technically I cannot, because at the federal level it says that if I modify an imported gun, I'm breaking the law because of, and that's called 922R. You can look that one up. That one's a whole bunch of shit where basically 50% of the parts have to be from America or something like that.
Yep.
So if I change the trigger, that's only one part of the 20 part list, so that's only 5% or some nonsense. It's ludicrous. Now, granted, no one's ever going to come around to my gun. It's like, hey, that looks like an American trigger on your Chinese SKS. You can't have that, pretty much. Or like, there's other weird things. It's like, how come you can buy 30-06 armor piercing ammo? It's like, well, because you can, because it's rifle ammo, but you're not, the federal law says that you're not allowed to buy armor piercing pistol ammo. And so the ATF, in all of their brilliance, determined that 223 is a pistol round. I don't know how or why.
Really?
And that you cannot own armor piercing ammo. And it's not like you're buying armor piercing ammo because you want to go pierce ammo. Is that sometimes you come by armor piercing ammo at, say, gun stores or gun shows where it's like, yeah, I've had these things for 50 years. What do you want? It's like, I'll give you like 25 cents a piece. And then you go through it and you look at the stamping, or you look at the tip and stuff like that. It's like, oh, this is an armor piercing 30-06. Just little nonsense like that. Or even people who don't understand how the New York pistol permit process works. It's like, I walk them through. It's like, hey, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do A, B, C, D, E. And they're like, oh man, that's like a lot. It's like, okay, well, that's what I had to go through. And you just told me that the law wasn't strict enough on pistols because somebody took a pistol and robbed a store the other day. It's like, obviously that guy didn't follow the law. I doubt he had a pistol permit, but like, what's next? And there's little nuances. Assault weapons. I didn't want to really touch on it because that's a whole nother can of worms, but assault weapons, I can't have certain features on my AR. Now there's there's no exceptions, but there's different ways you can work around it because of the way the law is written, like garbage. It's written like absolute garbage, to the point where a lot of people don't want, it's not like they don't want to play with it. Of course, no one wants to play with teetering on the edge of the law, right? But some people are so fearful that they're going to get arrested for something very, nefarious or unwritten or a gray zone, or something is untested, or it's really frustrating because like for example, the law says you can't have pistol grips that protrude beneath the action of the firearm, and that's verbatim. However, all of my semi-auto rifles that have traditional wood stocks, the part of the grip that you actually grab, all of them protrude below the action. And that's something that has never been tested, has never been defined, but no one wants to risk the felony. Everything is a felony in New York. If you break one gun law, it's all a felony. And that's why people are so scared, because again, felons can't own guns.
That's like
so if you can,
sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry. No, basically, if you commit a non-crime because your gun looks looks like a certain way, that is an automatic felony, and you'll serve 2 years in jail for a cosmetic feature. And when you sit down and you tell people this, they're like, "Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought they banned assault weapons." It's like, or did they ban AR-15s? Like, well, no, they didn't. They banned how many grips I can have on it, or some nonsense. They banned, I can't have an adjustable stock. I can't have a folding stock. I can't have a flash hider or a muzzle brake. I can't have a foregrip, but I can have a quad rail. The quad rail is useless, but the rail is useless to hold it. I can go on for forever, like I already am. But it's really annoying because everyone's afraid of getting charged with a felony because everything is a felony.
I mean that can ruin your life though, for something so simple. Like, I was gonna bring up another horror story where like this lady who had like a stalker or someone that ex-husband whatever had a concealed carry pistol, and she was flying into like Maine or something like that, but her flight got delayed or rerouted to New York because of weather. Next thing you know, it was like she landed, the cops waiting for her because I guess you have to declare the firearm at the airport, and the cops arrested her for a felony, and she was like that. So now she like they let her off, but now she's a felon. She can't teach anymore, and like that ruined her life over what? Because she was traveling between state to state, and in her home state, she was legally carrying a firearm and traveling to where. But because she got stopped in New York and it was against whatever they had going on, it was reciprocity. I guess they like.
Oh yeah, and
That
that
doesn't make any
but that happens
sense.
everywhere. Like I think New Jersey was one of the most prominent
Shit,
states for
Badger.
that. Badger.
Badger.
8 months. Wow. Thank you
He's
so
been on
much.
for a long time.
Um, where I think in New Jersey this happened. Now it used to be that Governor Chris Christie, if you ever got caught up in one of these weird nefarious laws, Chris Christie would pardon, and then you would go off. And this happened all the time. There were tons of people who would basically they would guns are so regulated in New Jersey that they would pick up their guns, they would go to the range, but on the way to the range they stopped for gas or they stopped for Dunkin' Donuts or something, and somehow some way a cop would arrest them for um, breaking the law that said that you have to go straight from your house to the range and you cannot stop anywhere in between, quite literally to the T. That's what that how that law was written, and the law was crap, but Governor Chris Christie would just pardon you. Now, Chris Christie is not the governor anymore. It's Murphy. I can't remember what his name is, but something Murphy. And obviously, there's no mercy there. So if you tie your shoelaces the wrong way on Tuesdays, you can go to jail for a felony, and that's just it bewilders me how a lot of these people are so ignorant that and I know it's all for political motivation, nonsense like that, but it's very, very frustrating. Like, if I get charged with a felony, I lose my job. I could lose my apartment because I won't pass a background check for an apartment. I won't be able to get a better job. I might as well just not be homeless, but I might as well just go get a job at McDonald's because I think they're like the only ones where you'll get a guaranteed job by not because they won't. It's just it's infuriating.
Yeah, it's crazy how it all works out that way.
What's next?
What do you think about, since gamers, talk about violent video games and whatnot earlier, uh, do you think them supporting, getting interested in firearms, becoming, Second Amendment supporters, and then getting interested in actual firearms?
That's honestly how I started. Because when I was a teenager, I played Call of Duty, and I loved that, and I loved the way Call of Duty 4 specifically. And I loved the way that the soldier would like reload his gun, and I thought that was just the most fascinating thing. But at the time, I was only like 15, so I couldn't enjoy that. Oh, I thought I heard my phone ringing. Um, uh, I was fascinated by that. Now I know a lot of people who will play Call of Duty. They enjoy that game, but and those are mutually exclusive. You don't have to be pro gun because you play Call of Duty. You don't have to be exclusive, against gun games for the same reason that you can be non-violent and play violent video games. Um, I think those don't go hand in hand.
How, say that again?
Oh, sorry. So you can be a proponent of gun control, but you can also enjoy Call of Duty for the gun violence factor. Those are not mutually exclusive, or excuse me,
Okay.
those are mutually exclusive. The same way that you can be a non-violent person, but still enjoy uh, violent video games like Doom or Gears.
Well, yeah, well, because the whole point of it is just to have fun. It's not real, it's just a game, and not many people are like, oh yeah, I really love this game because I could just shoot motherfuckers. It's not really how that works. It's more so it's just fun. It's action. It's like watching an action movie. It keeps you enticed. It's just entertaining, and it's for the most part, it's all make believe. It's like like years ago, people as younger kids, would play war or whatever, against each other, or even paintball, paintball gun or airsoft. how that's like just fun to do, but it's safe to do if still done right with all the proper gear and whatnot. But it's not real. That's kind of going, like I said, with parents teaching their kids right. But I really think it would help, if gamers would, or anyone interested in firearms would actually go through the process of learning about them and learning how they actually work in real life, and know that one, that their game, what they do in the game is nothing compared to real life shooting. Because like you don't have that supreme accuracy, and you can just pick it up and go bop, 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 and hit everything in such a tight group. I mean, just handling like you said, as I make earlier, uh, like handguns are difficult on their own. Why you wouldn't let someone start off with that? Because it'd be easier to kind of handle a rifle versus a handgun at a high caliber. Because I mean, there's a whole all those funny videos or whatever of like women holding a Desert Eagle and popping themselves in the face because of the recoil. You know,
Yeah, those are always funny.
they're funny, but at the same time, I look at those and like that's not really uh putting in their best light. And also the person, and I guess on a serious note, I hate to be kind of like a party pooper on it, but like the person that allowed his girlfriend or wife to handle that gun without having any experience beforehand, it's kind of dumb in my opinion. Because yeah, it's funny, like, oh, I bumped my head, ow, oh, haha, funny. But I mean, she could seriously hurt herself, and that's where gotta be a bit of a stickler about safety.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
Because well, heck, I can say that, like, I grew up around hunters. Like my dad was a hunter and a part of a hunting club and everything. And I, when I was younger, I'd go hunting with them and hang out with all of them. And I remember one time, like, kind of a funny side note is one of them had, I think it was some kind of 7 millimeter bolt action rifle or something, some higher caliber. And for whatever reason, he goes prone on the ground, but he's got his face so close to the scope that when he pulled the trigger, it popped up and it
No sight
cut.
relief.
Yeah, it cut. Like it bashed into his eyebrow. Like he cut himself.
Hmm?
And it's just like we were all kind of laughing, like, "Oh, you dumbass! Like, what are you doing?" Like, it's like he pops up. He's like, "Damn, that thing kicks like a motherfucker." Yeah, little goofy things like that, but still, you gotta be safe because I mean, if he wasn't, luckily it just hit above his eye. It could hit his eye and be blind.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's always an inherent risk, like with driving a car, that you're gonna get hurt. So,
Hmm.
a
And
gun.
that's why I will still stick with my point of that there should be more training and regulation with that.
Well, I think it's a
Um,
culture thing, though. Like, you have those who are completely against even the conversation of firearms. You have those who might be, more open to it, and those who are all for it. And that's why I kind of brought up that like gamer point earlier in the list of stuff we might talk about today. Is like, so gamers are exposed to firearms in like, in a manner which is almost enjoyable through things like COD and whatnot. So like, you want to get the next
mhm.
gun, you're using guns. That's the main point of the game. You're playing tag by shooting someone to play the game. So it's like, okay, maybe in this sort of quote unquote culture war about firearms, maybe they a gamer group, not everyone in who plays games is into guns or against guns. They're just kind of there. They're just
Yeah,
using guns in this form of media for entertainment. So like, well, maybe if we take a next step and say, hey, this is how a gun actually functions compared to how it works, but like you're already kind of indoctrinated to guns, you kind of know what's going on with them. You see like the basic functions, you see how things leave, expected, reloads, whatnot. Let's take a step further. Let's do the real thing. Let's show you how it work. What's education and safety and like proper use of it, whatnot. So that was what kind of brought that up. Was just do you think that it's a good idea to make that leap from gaming to life to like just to get knowledge of it or practice or to go to the range and shoot, you
yeah,
know? And like Vlad said, that's how he got started. Was I think is what you said was you were playing video games, interested in guns, and looked up more, and you sought them out and learned and whatnot. So it was just it was an interesting thought. I thought looking at pages like again Lucas Baki and T-Rex Arms, and then Oleon Nore or
Uh, Noir, I think.
Coleon
Noir.
Noir.
Yeah, there you go. I screwed that up.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
weird.
y'all have heard of him though, right? So
Yeah.
Coleon.
Coleon Noir. Yeah, he has some good stuff on there. I think I wanted to bring up too earlier about like so how Vlad's laws are really difficult to get a firearm in, not so much. Um, Leon had a good video on like how these two dudes broke into this guy's house. They both had guns and stuff, I think, and basically said, "Give me your money." And the guy's gonna have anything, and got pistol whipped a lot, and he was like not doing too great in this fight apparently. But his pregnant wife in the back room, they had an AR, and she was able to come out and stop the fight, and like killed one of them, but saved her husband's life as a pregnant woman who's like in that took your most vulnerable state as a human being in my mind is like, you're in the
Or elderly.
shower, you're elderly, you're pooping in the shower or something like that, being pregnant, you're pretty vulnerable in that state. So
Oh, not me. I got I got a shower gun.
shower gun, yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I thought you were gonna say because you can't get pregnant.
that too.
Oh my
That's
god, no. But
I don't
yeah,
know,
no,
man.
shower gun.
But yeah, so like it's just interesting to think about like it equalized the playing field, and she was able to defend her home and her husband's life and stop that crime from being committed. So
Well, that's
but some folks are like, oh, it's terrible, she killed the guy, but it's like they were gonna kill her husband. But I don't know.
Yeah, like,
you can break that and cut that any way you want. It's
if
me,
they
that's
got
great,
guns
but
and they're in your house and it's a home invasion, to even think that they may or may not like, or just like, oh, they may not kill me, is you should think of the worst. They're already gone past that point of breaking into your house with armed. So I was gonna say with firearms, but they're armed and they're ready to do whatever they have to do to get whatever they want. I fight that back, defend yourself. It was something I lost my thought because I also thought about like how in Britain the laws over there where they're getting to the point where they're almost making it easier for criminals in a way because it's almost against the law to defend yourself
well,
because
there's that
they're
too,
worried
which
about
is
like killing somebody and it's like why like if they're going to try to harm me like why can't I defend myself and oh, I remembered like the thing Steven Crowder talks about all the time. He brings up the statistic using the CDC and everything, and it's kind of hard to measure, like he always says. But nobody really talks about how much like how many lives are saved by guns, just
right.
in
Like
general.
violent crime stopped with firearm or whatever.
Yeah, and I hate the term when people are like, "Well, you shouldn't fight fire with fire," and it's like, well, yeah, if you're
Why? I
fighting a
don't want to be
fire,
taking a dump and like someone walks in to shoot me in the face and I can't at least have the chance to do it back, or like that is
yeah,
the main means of defense nowadays is firearms. This is the technological
but
advancement. I'm
yeah,
not gonna throw a bar of soap and say, haha, bar of soap, clean yourself in your mind.
purple soda,
Ooh,
bang.
clean
Yeah,
up your
no,
axe.
But
Yeah, but you
the
gotta have a toilet gun nowadays.
yeah, but I mean that's the easiest way to defend yourself, and it's you got to kind of match what the criminals do because I mean obviously you can't go
they're
above
not
that
gonna
because
roll up
above
there
that's
and blow up your
bombs and shit.
house. I mean, they're gonna
I
get
know,
guns, so that's why you get a gun too.
but
That's why the pregnant lady equalized the
look,
playing field,
I
man.
know, I know. But my point that I was trying to make is that I still think it's silly that when anybody that they think that phrase is an argument in itself. It's like to defend what their anti-gun agenda. Like, well, you shouldn't fight fire with fire. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like, well, yeah, that doesn't make any sense if you're literally trying to control a fire. Duh. But this isn't the same thing as that. You have to match the level of threat with what's happening because if you don't and they have the superiority like the advantage above you, you're fucked. It's either be on a level playing field or try to get the one up on them because they're gonna do anything and everything to get the one up on you. So that to me has never made sense when they're like, "Oh, don't fight fire with fire because it's stupid. It doesn't make sense." Well, duh. I mean, yeah, if you look at it as in like fighting an actual fire, get fucking water, take the advantage. You
Well,
know,
yeah.
that's just my funny way of looking at it.
I get worried nowadays seeing reports of like people with like their Ring doorbells where it's like a video camera and it records and sends like to your phone what's happening outside your door.
Yeah,
And like there was one in California a while back, like maybe a few months ago, where like six dudes were like banging on this door trying to pry it open, and like they were yelling police. Like that's confusing already. Or like even like we have active shooter training at my work, and not too long ago there was an event down the street from my work site, and it was just I was kind of like we're talking about like what we're doing there, and I was kind of like it's interesting to think that like in the training it says you're supposed to like hide if you hide on fright whatever. And I was like, well, so if you're stuck in a room, let's say, because you have to hide, and the event you think ends, uh, what if the bad guy's still up and he's saying like, oh, we're police out, and you open the door and you're met with, how do you cope with that? Like, how do you deal with that situation where you don't know? So, like,
Yeah.
if there's 6 bad guys trying to break into your house and steal your stuff, yelling police, so it might disarm you or calm you down at the same time too. It's like you're in a situation where there has been shooting happening. It's like, what do you do? And that to me worries me a bit. Like, what if I'm not home and someone tries to break in while my fiance is home, and then like yelling police and whatnot, and I want to shoot a police officer obviously because we're not bad guys. So, but it ends up being a bunch of bad guys. So it's
Yep. And
and that's just, I mean, there's no answer to that really. It's just kind of one of those worries
you
in the
take
world.
precautions of that because, like,
Well, I mean, the Ring doorbell would identify, yeah.
well, yeah, I ring a doorbell, or if there's a peephole, even though there's the whole thing with peepholes, like they can see that if someone's home because they'll see the shadow or whatever. But at least that gives you an advantage to look to see what it is out there to confirm what it is. Because I mean, like I was saying, like you always want to try to get the one up on criminals because criminals are always going to try to manipulate. Because I mean, bad apples are bad apples. I mean, they're going to do anything and everything to get whatever they want. They're not like a law-abiding citizen. They're trying to take advantage of the system or do whatever they can to survive in what way. So that's where like security cameras and like security lights and whatnot, like motion censored things, and like I think now, especially nowadays more than ever, since criminals are able to get smarter, just like anything, there's evolution. Like having the ring doorbells are really smart to have because that way you can at least see what the fuck's out there. Unless someone blocks it, then that's weird. Then you should then have cameras looking and security things in place. That's why honestly, like having a security system in your
Security
house
things in
also.
place, huh? Like if someone covers camera up, you pull your gun out. Security thing in place, right? Gun, right? Right?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. Like if I can't tell like what's going on there, I'd be like what's going on, or something, or try to find some way. Because like talking about that's kind of scary. Because think that, oh, it's just police, I can just open the door. But next thing you know, you get bum rushed by 6 dudes, and it's like, what the fuck, you know? Like you gotta somehow prepare for that. Be difficult, but it's it's better to be safe than sorry, and that's something I've always stuck by.
Even then,
Um,
like being bum rushed too. Like I'm glad I took the course I did before I got my permit because I understood. We all, I assume, here in the chat, understand what castle doctrine and stand your ground laws are, right?
yep.
I mean, I do because New York has both of those.
But does New York have them both in full effect or like a partial effect?
So castle doctrine is in New York is if I'm in my house, I don't have to retreat. Oh, excuse me, you said stand your ground, but
Are they
yeah, so
both
stand your
state
ground
level
outside of.
or one federal and one state?
I don't believe there are any federal
Like
laws.
federal laws on like, well, I guess not. No, it's all state run part.
Okay, because I personally don't know mine whether we had castle or stand your ground.
Yeah, so like basically castle doctrine is basically if you're in your home, your castle, you have the right to castle. So like you don't have to retreat. If someone's in there trying to do harm to you, you can stop them essentially. And stand your ground is if you're out and about and someone tries to hurt you, fight back. No duty retreat. Like if I'm at my car and someone's shooting at me, I don't have to like hide or run. I can duck behind the engine and get my gun out and fire back. There's no. Cover that right, Vlad?
Right. So in New York, a little different in the sense that we don't have stand your ground, but we have to. You have to make a reasonable attempt to retreat. Now, the way that it's written um, is that it has to be reasonable to me. So it's one of those things that and this is probably the only part of New York State like law in regards to like self defense and firearms is actually well defined. Um, so you'd have to the prosecution would have to prove that my lack of a retreat was unreasonable. Um, excuse me, rather that it was. No, I said it right. That it was unreasonable. They have to prove that I hadn't a chance to retreat, and that the chance to retreat was more reasonable than my choice to stay because it was unreasonable. Um, so basically, it's on them to prove that I couldn't retreat or that I could retreat rather, and I had ample opportunity and stuff like that. But castle doctrine is completely the opposite. I don't need to retreat. I don't need to justify that. Is that if I reasonably fear that my life is in grave harm or danger, I can take action. and without having to retreat in my own home.
Yeah, I was trying to think of so I'm glad I went to the course because I understand what those laws are, but when I went to the course, I then learned that not all of them are like full effect. Essentially, there's like partial, like quasi versions of it. So like in castle doctrine, if someone breaks into my house, but I don't have a direct threat to my like bodily harm or like my life, I can't do anything about it. Or if I'm at my car and someone's breaking into my car, I can't do anything about it. Or if like they are getting out with my stuff and they're running down the hallway, I can't shoot them. Right? Because there's no threat to me. There's taking. So that's the only caveat to both those. Someone like my life, someone else's life.
Yep. That would totally. Yeah, sorry.
I was like, guys, fuck
I
y'all.
was
Mine.
focusing on reading something, and uh, yeah, it's like unfortunately, like I said, I don't know what mine are, but I mean, well, it kind of sucks though, because the fact that they have to put those laws in place, and they can't just be like, well, I was defending myself because that fucker was trying to kill me or get in my house or harm me, and that in a way that for defending yourself, you yourself can get in trouble, which is it's finicky, and it's kind of I mean, that's just the world that we live in right now, but it just sucks that, like, say, even out in public, like someone's, there's a either active shooter or someone trying to do armed robbery and you pull out your gun. I mean, you kill the person in some way, depending on where you are in the world or the country or, whatever, you could get in trouble yourself. And it's like, well, this guy was about to kill people and I saved a bunch of people and I'm the one that's in trouble because I killed him. Does make sense. Now, had that person only been harmed, I mean, and this also kind of gets a little off topic, but the fact that like criminals could even go to court and sue the person they were either robbing or whatever, that to me is mind blowing. That stories like that even exist. And that's like bringing to Britain. There are stories where certain apartment complexes had to, or they chose to get rid of their pools outside the property because they were worried about criminals falling in and drowning. And that's like, really? You're worried about a bad person being dumb enough to drown in a pool
Well, I mean,
on
so
your
I
property?
think they're focused on preservation of human life in general. So in with that perspective, I can understand the perspective of someone who's in that sense. I kind of question it, but I can't necessarily disagree with it because if there's no harm to someone's life, it's like a meeting. The meeting of magnitudes, I guess, is it's tough. Like,
Yeah.
there's no right answer to the question or wrong answer. It's just
Well,
where are you
'cause
on the spectrum of answers? I guess.
I mean, because where to me that becomes a little bit more gray is like suicide by cop kind of stuff. Like the guy might, and sometimes it's not always clear as day, but some dude's walking around with a knife or a gun or something, and he's acting erratic, but he's not actually trying to hurt anybody. He's just trying to get himself killed. It's like, well, you don't want to do that, but at the time, it's hard to ever like tell because I mean, if anything, say there was a smart criminal and they decided to do that for the cops to only arrest him or something to make it out or whatever, but they use that to kind of calm the cops down in some way. If a cop was to ever disregard his training, unfortunately, it could end up killing a cop. And that's where I don't know. That's where it's still a gray area because like you can never tell like if some dude's walking around with a gun or even we'll just say a knife, make it a little bit easier. Where yeah, granted, like less people could die from a knife wound because it's whether or not he cuts the right area or whatever, but that's still it's a life threatening thing, and whether or not he actually stabbed anybody, if he could just be a dude walking around or sitting in public with a knife in his hand, I mean that's I mean I'm not saying you should just run up to him and shoot him, but take the proper precautions to try not to if he does try to hurt somebody, like why not save that person's life in the shortest and easiest way possible instead of trying to make it harder on you and risking losing an innocent person to said bad person,
I mean, in those situations, it's as a at least concealed carry person, at least with the Virginia mindset, it's any harm to anyone's life nearby. So if I'm in a store and someone walks around with a knife, that can be perceived as a reasonable threat. So you could at that point brandish your firearm and act in defense of yourself and others. That seems Like if they're acting erratically with a knife swinging and swinging at random shit, you know. I mean, it's like because at the end of the day, if you do get involved in an incident, you have to like you essentially you might be charged or tried in court. So you have to convince people that what you did was the right.
Yeah.
It comes down to a giant judgment call, and then comparing your judgment to your peers,
But then,
which is
even
also like a
that,
bad thing too. Because like okay, if I'm do I really want to face that and shit like that, and do I want to
well,
that
it's
responsibility?
also that, but with the fact of like you're saying, you have to prove yourself to peers, like if it's uh or whatever type of jury, I forget what it's called. But if there is what the fuck are they called? God, I'm having this massive mind blank. Um, but yeah, you gotta prove yourself in court. But like, say, the the jurors you know, are against you mainly just because you had a gun and you killed somebody, even though that person was up to no good, and could possibly kill somebody else or has killed somebody else, depending on the situation. It might be a little bit different, but say it was someone walking around with a gun, and was about to possibly shoot somebody because he was trying to rob or whatever, and you end up killing that person trying to save the person being mugged. It's like, well, why? Like, I mean, I can understand going through the court process to make sure everything was done right, but to convict the person that saved the person's life because he killed somebody in order to save that person's life, it seems a bit ass backwards
I mean,
at
I
times.
don't know much about situations like that. I know they exist, but like that's like one of the biggest fears I have if I ever got into a situation like I don't, where like I have to use it and be tried, and they're like, okay, improperly,
Well,
something like that where it just goes wrong, where like it's not so cut and dry, maybe a little gray area, or perception's off, or I don't know,
yeah.
something just goes wrong, I mean,
Well,
something clearly did because you had to use your carry, but like it goes wrong
mhm,
after the fact.
yeah.
That's something
And,
they
and
advocated for me in my course was like have insurance for this, for like they call it insurance, like basically you pay a fee, you're part of a membership of a group where you have lawyers that are basically like they specialize in self-defense law, and they like help you through that. That's my I
Right.
push too. Like
yeah.
I remember I got Paul on that one because for a while he didn't have it, and I was like, he's like, well, what's that? And I'm like, well, there's two main ones. Basically, you get in a situation, the event happens, you defend yourself, call them immediately right after, like as soon as you're safe, you call them, say, hey, I was involved in this, and this. Call the police. That whole thing unfolds.
Okay. Can anybody
Right.
get that?
Yeah, no, I think as long as you can, I guess, pay for it and prove, I guess prove you
It,
need it, but
is
like you just
is
sign
it
up
just like
for
a
it.
permit or something, or you have like a certain people that you can call? It's like a card or whatever to
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
a
like.
card, and you just you call in. They ask like what's your membership ID number. You give them a number, then they say okay, what happened. There's two main ones. I think like the U.S. CCA something,
Mhm.
and then there's Texas U.S. Texas Law Shield, and that's one I use. But basically, my determining factor was when I call there's a normal line where you ask questions and call and talk to them for normal stuff, and there's the emergency line where like you just were involved in an incident, and you call the number, and this person you talk to is a lawyer immediately. So everything you say on the phone and from that point on to that person is covered by attorney client privilege. So whereas the other one is they screen you, they say okay, what do you need, what happened, and then all that stuff can get pulled and be used against you. So
Mhm.
and at that point I was kind of like, well, if it's me against 12 other people to convince them, I don't want to give any advantage me defending my life, assuming I did everything right. Like I don't plan on just desk popping and shit, like assuming everything goes right and that happens, like I want to have every chance I can go home. Even after I had to defend myself from dying, I still want to go home.
Yeah, and like yeah, but the thing I was gonna talk about where that would like the situation would happen is it's more so like a cop situation. That's the whole point, like body cams and stuff, and they review that stuff. But a lot of cops um are viewed, especially nowadays, are just viewed in a poor light. They don't realize like what. And I'm kind of glad that you kind of introduced me to donut operator. I've seen some of this stuff before, but like after that one video you sent me, I just like started watching all this stuff, and I learned a lot about like what cops have to deal with, and kind of dealing with like what's actual proper procedure, and learning about certain state laws that make it to where cops can do certain things that certain uh, what is it called, like road, or the pirates are, or the police are called road pirates, and this road captain was unwrongfully pulled over by road pirates or whatever. Like whole Pennsylvania versus Mims, how a cop, if he asks you to step out of your car you have to abide by that, or else he can use force to pull you out of your car, you know, kind of little things like that. Um, and it kind of sucks that people just off the, one that even news are like top news people like Fox, CNN, and stuff will chop up a video or take a story immediately and not get down to the facts and present these people and or these cops in this bad light, not realizing, well, this happened beforehand. This person brandished a gun or something like that, and that's why the person ended up getting shot. Like
I think
little
he
things
had
like
a good
that.
one about that one too with a female cop in California, I think.
Oh, are you talking about the? Is it the one where the person wrestled her, grabbed a gun,
Yeah,
and
and
almost shot her point blank,
yeah, like
and it
ran
just got
away, and then
jammed?
like everyone came like 10 seconds later. But like the
Yeah.
original like news media only showed the part where like they like had four like police cruisers and they like, surrounded him in a cul-de-sac and they were like shooting at him because he was like brandishing a gun at them and had shot an officer
Hmm.
previously. But the full cam footage from the helicopter, what it was this guy who was like twice the mass of this female officer got wrestled and he was trying to retain her gun, so she's trying to fight him and fight the gun to stay in the holster, but he won and got the gun, and he made distance and then turned around and she tried to run away and he shot her like 3 times in the back. But then seconds later,
Oh,
police
this is a
like
different
came around the
story.
corner of this cul-de-sac and like came out, drew up their guns and like shot him and they killed him. But it was like perception is reality in the sense of like they only showed the part where he was like at the end getting shot, and then
Hmm.
20 seconds prior he was fighting an officer and shooting her in the back. But I think she survived thanks to her armor and her, her back and stuff. But
Yeah, because it was it the one where there because the video that I've only seen is like somebody's recording from their window and like on a phone is, and then all you can barely see through the trees is that she's wrestling with a person. The guy gets a gun and shoots one off almost point blank, but misses, and the gun jams. And as she starts running away, he cocks again and fires one off at her as she's running away. But luckily, that one misses. And then the backup shows up, and then all you hear is "Put down your gun," and you hear pop, and then pah, everyone just the rest of the cops unloading on the dude.
yeah,
Um,
he's a lot of good
which
ones. He's a lot of good videos like that, just breaking down what's happening and like the goods and
yeah,
bads. As I like, he's very like
and I'm very happy for more people like, 'cause there's like Mike the cop, and then there's one other person other than Donut
Officer
Operator.
401 is pretty good too.
Yeah, so, like, I love it these people bringing that to light and like, just, like, proving all these idiots out there that whenever they see a cop video, like, "Look at these cops beating up on this child," or whatever. "Oh, this guy they pulled him out of his car." They can't do that. That's against the law. These cops don't even know the law. It's like, "Well, you don't know the law." Because like, my favorite thing is, like, whenever, like, the whole Penn versus Mims, whenever that gets brought up and just, whenever I see, like, a funny cop video, someone, like, trying to show them in the wrong light, I'll look in the comments and eventually I'll find somebody as like Penn versus Mims and like just everywhere. It's like, well, he was in the right. The cop could do that, and then all these people are idiots that think that was wrong. So, but I just think it's weird how we're getting to a weird state, kind of like Britain, where it's almost getting to the point where we shouldn't defend ourselves. And if we see somebody else in trouble, it's like we can't even help them out almost, because we have to worry about then ourselves if we would get in trouble in the process of trying to help somebody else. We can't help our fellow man when another man or woman is acting like a dumbass, walking around with a weapon, trying to rob or kill people. And it's like, well, why can't we stop them? You know? So that to me is scarier than just people having guns. Just not being able to defend myself from anything. It
Here's
would be terrifying.
here's a question for y'all since I think all three of us have our carry permits. But when I first got mine, I
I don't.
was what?
I need to get mine. I haven't had the time to go to the down to the
Get
office.
it out of chat. I'm just kidding.
But that's also why I don't carry mine.
Yeah, it's true. But I was thinking about well, I don't know what the law is for you in New York, but are you required if you're at a traffic stop and you have your firearm, your carry gun on you? Do you have to inform the officer that?
No.
Okay.
But if they ask, I always have to tell them.
Like,
That's
so
one
when
of
you
those.
first got your thing, like thinking about that ahead of time, like, would you preemptively just tell them, hey, like, have this, or
Um,
do you normally not say anything at all? And like,
no, I'd rather say nothing. So I have a different outlook
Mm.
on cops and interacting with cops in the way I treat it more defensively in the sense that I if I'm accused of something, I don't want to talk to a cop. This was something that came up at a gun range a few years ago where one of the directors said like um oh yeah, if an officer asks for your license, you have to show them your license. You have to prove that all your guns are yours. And I said, no, if a cop comes up to me and asks me for my license and he says he's a cop, I'm not going to talk to him at all. It's not I don't feel like I'm not obligated to talk to a cop, especially somebody who is accusing me of a crime. I definitely don't want to talk to them in the same way that, like, a lawyer would tell you to shut up, don't talk, don't say anything, because anything you say can and will be used against you. That's tried true, and that's why. So, like, yeah, if a cop asks, then sure. But it's also one of those things, like, yeah, if a traffic stop, I probably should never have to tell him, because and here's something, I've never been pulled over while I'm carrying, and I've never had an officer ask me if I had if I owned any guns or if I had any guns on me. Purely because I think this is because when I first got my license, it was recommended to me that I get my permit FOIA exempt, so that, or not FOIA, it's something in New York where I can exempt it from public knowledge, where no one can look me up and see if I have a pistol permit or not. And that came after a New York City journalist published the names of like a couple 100,000 New York State pistol permit owners who, under the guise of like, oh, if you think you like your guns or something, try and defend yourself against this. And it's like, it was a really, really nasty like thing where the guy didn't do anything illegally. He basically looked up all these names and published them, letting millions of people know that these people on this list have guns or have pistols. And that's why I had mine exempted. So I don't know if the police can see it or not. If it comes up, if they run my name or run my plate, I don't know if they can see it or not.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Because for me, I think it would be like, especially if it's a traffic stop and they pull you over, um, wouldn't it be kind of a smart thing to, like, when you hand them your license, you show them that you have a carry permit, like, or would that be a bad thing to let them know that you have a gun? Because at some point, well, I mean, if obviously if they ask you, you're going to tell them, right?
Well, yeah. If they ask, I have to tell them that's the law. But I'm not obligated to tell them on the spot.
Well, I can understand that. But I still have kind of a question about that as well. But say he asked that, like, or the cop asked you if you have a gun, you show them the permit and everything, and then they ask you to step out of the vehicle, you would step out of the vehicle for their safety, right?
Well, yeah, I have to at that point. If he asks me
Okay.
to step out, I kind of, there's certain things, and I'm not familiar with all of them, but there's certain things where it's like, yeah, the cop can ask you to do that. He can ask to search your vehicle, and that's one of those other things too that I learned is, if a cop ever asks you to search your vehicle, you always say no, because you don't gain anything out of letting them search. Uh, it's like, oh well, we just want to see, if you have nothing to hide. It's like, okay, well, following that logic, I should just take the door off my toilet and then anybody can see because I have nothing to hide, right? And that's extraneous. But
Well, I see your point, but I don't think that's a good analogy.
no,
I have an experience with that too. So,
But my next question is real quick is, say you're walking down the street or something, and the cop says, "Hey, like, can I see your license?" You would say no and walk away.
Probably, it's one of those things where it's like, and this gets a little complex. I'm not a sovereign citizen. However, I hate being
man.
No, I hate
You're-
being construed.
I am just
with-
traveling, free person traveling.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
like,
require a license.
but I hate the fact that it's like, oh, dude, just let him search your car. It's like, well, no, because I don't have to. Okay, I have a right to say no. He can get a warrant, right? He can get a dog if he wants to sniff and do the whole search my car thing. There's nothing in the car, but I don't have to justify that. It's the same thing where it's like, if a random cop, like, and obviously it's not going to be so blatant that I'm just walking down the street and then some guy questions me, right? It's not going to be that. It's not going to be that
That to me
simple.
wouldn't seem like an actual cop. If it was, if it was
Yeah,
an actual cop, he'd be more so patrolling, kind of looking at you, maybe doing like calling in, like asking database or something like that, trying to figure out, if you match the description of somebody, and then they'd probably approach you.
Oh,
Versus
yeah.
just be like,
But
hey, let me see your license.
It's also one of those things where it's like, it's not illegal for me to walk around the streets without my license. So it's one of those things like, yeah, well, what's the difference between me saying no, you can't see my license, and no, I don't have a license, outside the fact that I'm probably lying to the cop, which in itself is illegal. But um, pretend for a moment I don't have my
Well,
ID on me or something
wait,
like that. I
well,
left
say
my
if you don't
wallet
have
home.
your ID on you, you wouldn't then be carrying at that point either.
Oh no, no, of course not.
Okay.
And this assumes I'm carrying this. Yeah, of course, this assumes I'm carrying.
Yeah.
And like Delta said, like casual encounters are not grounds for detaining. And I don't want to get into the thing of like, well, am I being detained? It's like the cop has to have a legit reason for stopping me like this. And this has to do with the constitutionality of stop and frisk. Now, obviously, he's not frisking me, but the idea is that seeing somebody walk down the street is not grounds for, um, you know, who are you? Where are you going? What are you doing? Now, obviously, if they ask me immediately, like, do you have your license? Do you have a pistol? Or was it, do you have a pistol on you? Or do you have a pistol permit? It's like, well, yeah, I have to, because the law says I have to respond that way. Um,
What if you match, like, not saying you would or any situation, but there's possibility that maybe you're walking down the street, you match the description of somebody they're looking for, like either clothes wise or whatever, maybe not physical appearance, but like same clothes, you got your hood up or whatever, same pants, and they're like, all right, well, let's go talk to this guy and see if he's got an ID and everything. But like, and a cop, says, hey, I don't know the proper procedure for how the police would handle that necessarily, just walking on the street, because typically that's more so like it's a car and they pull a car over because it matched the description of somebody else that was in some kind of hit and run or whatever. They pull that person over, trying to get an ID, and use that person either is a legal citizen. They give them the ID and they find out, oh, it's not the person they're looking for, or they freak out, run from the cops, and they get arrested or whatever.
It's the
So
part where they say you're detained because you matched to like community.
oh, sure.
yeah.
At that point, it's like, yeah, obviously it's easier to just give them my license, but I'm going to default to the other things, in the sense that I'm not going to talk to them because they just accused me. They accused me of something.
Because if you complain about it, they say, okay, well, we stopped you because you're wearing the same shit as the guy we're looking for who did X, Y, Z. Sorry for like, hey, but you look.
Oh, okay, yeah, and that very well might be. However, um, it's still one of those interaction things, like, where I'm not going to talk to you. Of course, I'm going to comply with your lawful orders, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to tell you where I'm going. That's none of your business. And I know that gets into sovereign citizen bullshit, but it's like, and I'm not giving them any credit. It's that you have the right to be, to be free, and that doesn't sound like it means anything to it.
that sounds like a
Right.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No,
No,
you're
no,
right.
but
Like
you
you
know
don't
what I mean,
have to tell them all that stuff. You just
and
what
that's
pertains
really,
to the situation, not your day. It's not a big deal.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But
kind
if
of
they
what
ask
it's
you,
not.
would you be a dick and be like, you don't need to know?
Well, no, I don't.
You could see like I don't see that actually
Yeah,
relevant or something.
I don't
Like
need to be a dick about it. It's like, it's just one of those things, like, oh, hey, you're detaining me for something, for a reason. I just don't feel like talking to you, because I don't want to. I just don't. I don't get anything out of it, right? I could, yeah, you're right. I could say casually, it's like, oh, I'm on my way to the bar down the street. No, I'm just walking. I came from somewhere. Yeah, all that's going to happen. But I'm not, when he's asking me, like, if he's asking me things about, like, where I've been, it's about the context of the accusation. Yeah, if I'm feel like I'm being accused of something, I really don't feel like playing into that the same way that,
But the
you have
thing
to.
is,
well, you can
though,
still ask too. Is like, am I being detained? And then if they ask
Oh,
you, then
sure.
okay, I'm
And
shut now. Sorry, but if it's
yeah,
no, we're just usually at that point they say, oh no, we're talking to you because X, Y, Z, or they detect they're human beings. They understand you're like probably apprehensive to being talked to by a police officer.
yeah, and
but
that's
why
really
is
it.
that?
Why are you apprehensive to being? Oh, you don't know what the fuck's going on. Some dude shows up. Is like, hey,
Yeah,
question.
I
You're
mean,
like,
it's not.
who the fuck are you? Like,
It's
I
one of
mean,
those things
well, I
where,
can understand that situation where it could be like a fake cop or whatever, and then just
what's not even that? You
using
just don't
power
know
or
what's going
whatever.
on. Like,
But
yeah, it's like, I
what's
think
the
it's just
point
like,
of like not talking to them if they like say, hey, well, we need to see your license. Like, hey man, where are you going? Like, asking you questions. Like, I feel like if you start acting suspicious by saying, well, that you don't need to know that, or like whatever, it's like, or if you like, to me, it makes you seem suspicious. Is the first thing you say is like, am I being detained? And then like, well, no, we just need to ask this
Oh,
question.
right. Obviously,
And
I'm
it's
not
like,
going
they're
to.
obviously not going to tell you you're being accused of something, or that they're looking for someone that matches your description, because that, if they just basically said, hey, we saw somebody that matched the description that robbed a store the other day, I mean, or whatever, and then it's like, oh, bye, fear them, and they run off, or whatever.
No.
They're not going to tell you why they're talking to you. That's the whole point of, like,
Oh yeah, like, but it's
dumb.
it's also one of those things, like, it's going to be obviously be a lot more casual and fluid than that. I'm not going to open up with, oh, am I being detained?
Well,
It'll probably be one of those things like, okay, I'm
Some
going to show
folks
you,
do.
I'm going to show you my license. But the moment that I sort of feel like I'm being accused of something, or they're looking for someone, and even if it isn't me, it's one of those things where, yeah, I'm probably going to shut up, because I don't want it all comes back to what, like, my lawyer said, is like, hey, if you ever have an interaction with the cops, you don't talk to the cops without a lawyer, because anything you say can and will be used against you, even if you're not, even if you're not the person. There's a great video I like to reference where he talks about it. It's like, hey, even if you're not the guy, you definitely didn't do it, and there's no evidence of you doing it. Don't do it anyway. Don't talk to them anyway, because it doesn't benefit you the same way it doesn't benefit you to say, oh, hey, can I search your car? It's like, no, you can't search my car. Oh, well, why not? It'll, in and out. If you got nothing to hide, it's like, it'll be easy. It's like, no, I don't have to. You can get a warrant, and it's like, that's the same way of having those kinds of interactions, is like, I don't need to prove my innocence. I don't need to prove that I didn't do a crime. And genuinely, the cops are
why?
probably looking for the right. Why don't I need to prove that I haven't committed a crime?
Yeah, if they're looking
Because
Because,
you're
for
innocent until proven guilty. That's how
Yeah,
that's how it works.
But the thing is, if you
it's
match
literally
it,
it.
because the only reason why they would ever want to search your car, it wouldn't just be random. They would have to match some kind of subscription, usually suspicion or something, for them to want to do it, or at least
Oh,
that's general
sure, but
practice.
I mean, they
But
can.
so
Well, they
if a
don't need.
cop pulled me over and pulled me out, say, hey, can you step out? I'd be like, yes. And then he's like, well, we need to search your car. And I'm like, first thing I would say is like, why? Because obviously I'd be confused. But then it's like, well, for whatever reason they say, I'm like, okay, we'll go have at it. If I'm not, because obviously I'm not
Oh
hiding any
yeah,
drugs or
well,
anything, and it's not going to hurt me. Well, I guess in the event of their cops planning shit.
yeah. That's really what it's. A lot of that has to do with, like, okay, so if
But doesn't that get
a
eliminated
cop
with body
doesn't need.
cams?
Well, no, a cop doesn't need to ask. A cop doesn't need reasonable suspicion to merely ask you if he can search your car. If you willingly let him search your car, then he doesn't need a warrant. He doesn't need reasonable suspicion. You physically let him search your car, or you physically let him search your person, or something like that, right? And now he has to have a reason to search your car. When you say no. So if if he can't search my car, it probably means he doesn't have a good reason. And that's just one of those. It's another one of those things. It's like, yeah, no, I don't. It's not that I've ever had a negative interaction with a car, or with a car. I have.
They've always
All
been
right.
so good to me.
Cop. um. So it's like, it's not that I've never had a negative interaction with a cop. It's just that, and I know this happens more in other states. This isn't a New York thing, but like civil forfeiture. The police can confiscate your money because they think, and that's the whole thing with civil forfeiture, is a really fucked up way that many police officers confiscate your property, and they're not obligated to give it back. The property in the context of your money. They can take your money because some state law, like I know a number of states out in the Midwest have this, where they can, and there's a John Oliver thing about it goes into stop and frisk and civil forfeiture. It's this fucked up thing where they're not accusing you, they're accusing your money, and they don't have to prove. It's up to you to prove that money is yours, kind of thing. A little bit like how the IRS is like, where'd you get all this money in your savings account? It's like, well, you kind of have to prove with your taxes and stuff that that's your money, and
Yeah,
that's really fucked up.
That would be through an audit, correct?
Oh, correct, yeah, but
And that would
and I know it's a
cost them
completely different thing, but it's also one of those things. It's like, I don't. It's for all intents and purposes, the cop is a stranger. I don't have to inherently believe that he has good intention. The same way I don't have to inherently believe any other stranger is inherently truthful.
But The only reason why I get a little confused because granted, I completely understand, like the whole like because I would do this whole same thing with like getting a warrant for the car and everything like that because it would be weird that they would just randomly search my car, and unless they had a warrant, I'd be like no. But this doesn't always
If
work.
they have a warrant, you can't stop them.
That's literally it. It's like, hey, if you want to search my car, you can get a warrant, or you can bring your dog around and do that whole 9 yards.
Because if they search
I'm
your
not
car,
going to tell him to bring.
if they ask you, so let me just break down the procedure. So a cop says, "Hey, we need to search your car." You say, "No, please get a warrant." They have to be like, "Okay."
That's it. That's pretty much where it ends.
And
They can't search my
if they
car.
say,
Yeah.
"Well, no, we don't need a warrant. We need to search your car. We have probable cause." What do you say in that case?
Well, the cop also, and this is the really fucked up part, is that the cop can legally lie to you. So the cop can say, well, we don't need a warrant. I have probable cause. They can say that, and you pretty much
Probable
have to
cause.
have your wit to say no, get a that because all the facts considered, they have to get a warrant to search your shit, no matter what, or
Is that
they
state
do
by
their.
state, or is that
I believe that's pretty universal. You have a Fourth Amendment right against search and seizure, and that's literally what it stems from. And this is kind of why stop and frisk was declared unconstitutional, because cops were racially profiling people, stopping them, searching them, and just randomly. And the worst offender it wasn't happening in New York City, where cops were just stopping people left and right under this guise that they're stopping crime. Is that, oh, if we catch a criminal between crimes, that means we can stop that crime. And in reality, they stop and frisk like hundreds of thousands of people over the course of decades,
yeah,
and they arrested a small dozen, or like a really small handful, like an insignificant number, over
kind of like 5% of out of all people?
non-crimes like drug possession and stuff. And
Yeah.
obviously it's like you mix that with the crap in the 90s, like we talked about. It's like that's why people are kind of defensive. They don't like to that's why people are starting to really dislike cops. Now, I'm not saying I hate cops, because I know what purpose they serve, but at the same time, it's like, if I'm having an interaction, the cop is having an interaction with me for a reason. Yeah, he's looking for somebody. It's obviously not me, because I'm not a criminal. But at the same time, I don't have to prove that I'm not a criminal. Yeah, it's like, I don't have to prove that I'm not a criminal. I don't have to let them search my car. I don't have to talk to them. Or like, if a cop knocks on my door.
It's like incumbent on them to find the proof that.
Exactly. And that's the way it should be. Like, if a cop comes to my door, he knocks on the door, I'm not obligated to answer the door. I don't have to. There's no law saying I have to answer the door. And that's
Well,
like,
they literally, I mean, they can search your property if they're doing like a welfare check. But with that, they have to knock on the door.
welfare checks have a.
Because someone usually calls in saying, "I haven't heard from my elderly dad in like."
Well, I know, but I'm saying, but either way, that'd be like one situation where they knock on the door and it's like, it's police, But they that they knock and say police and look around and say police. Well, I know, but there's one video where they did a welfare check on a lady, and for whatever reason, these cops weren't. They were not. Like, one was banging on the door, one was looking around. Or actually, I don't know if the one went to the front door and banged and like said police, but one of them was walking around the back with just a flashlight, and he didn't say police or anything, didn't notify. And when he's looking through the window, the lady brandished a gun at him, and he pulled and fired one shot and killed her. And obviously, that cop was in the wrong because they weren't doing proper procedure when doing the welfare check.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that person thought it was a bad person sneaking around their yard, so obviously they were trying to defend themselves. And the person, I don't even think brought the gun up. They just had a gun. The guy immediately just saw a gun and is like, put the gun down, and fired before he even did anything.
Oh yeah. No, obviously he was blatantly in the wrong. They were trying to execute a welfare check, and that just went horribly wrong. The cop was in the wrong, and I think he got charged for that. And obviously that's not every cop. Every cop who's executing a search warrant or a welfare check, generally speaking, isn't going to do that. They're not going to run around your house and not say anything. Because honestly, yeah, no, if I was that lady, hey, I think there's somebody sneaking around. Who and then instantly she's dead. Because the cop didn't do his due diligence. And that's unfortunate for him, because he's probably going to go to jail for a long time for manslaughter at least.
Yeah, or at least I wouldn't say involuntary, because that was pretty voluntary.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. But yeah, like I know you're. It's like yeah, no. If cops come to my door, okay, granted, I'm gonna know. It's like, hey, your mom. Hey, Vlad, your mom hasn't heard from you in weeks. We're coming to do a welfare check. Are you okay? And it's like, oh, I'm actually fine. Thanks. No, I'm here. I just haven't talked to her because I work too damn much. That's completely different. We're talking about like it's, and I can give you the video on it because the guy's a lawyer out of Buffalo who gives a seminar to his to a class of to become lawyers, and he talks a lot. Hey, you got to know your rights. You got to know why you have these rights, and you exclaiming that you have a right to against search and seizure, you have a right to remain silent, isn't suspicious. Like, yeah, if a cop comes up to you and starts and it wants to accuse you of a crime, you don't have to talk to him. You don't have to. You can't be forced to compel.
Even in a traffic stop?
Oh yeah, even in a traffic stop, it's like yeah, sure. There's casual language you can have, and I'm not like being apprehensive in the sense that no, officer, you can't ask me where I'm going. That has nothing to do with your investigation. No, I'm not like that. It's
I don't ask questions.
yeah, it's like here, hey, here's my license, here's my registration. That's fine. Oh, I'm speeding. Whoops, my bad. And that's probably the way it goes. But if it somehow escalates to the point where it's like, hey, step out of your car, and it's like, oh, I see how this is, and so it's like, yeah, I step out of the car, I close the door behind me, and it's like if he asks me to say, or even like a sobriety check, like he wants me to, there's one of those things like he can't make me do a field sobriety check. He can't make me walk some dumb line. Those don't have. There's no procedure for those actually. At least in New York State, I don't know about other states, but there's no.
Yeah, I will say there is here because I
Oh
have
yeah.
actually an anecdotal story of me walking to my car from a person's house I was hanging out in my neighborhood down the road, and he did a breathalyzer on me because I was at a party. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
gonna explain more of that.
Breathalyzers are different. You don't have to walk the line. You don't have to do the field sobriety test. You if you can immediately ask for it, it's like, oh no, I'm not drunk. Just give me the breathalyzer. No, I'm not doing this. I'm not
Well, what you
walking
can
the
ask
line. I'm not
for,
reciting my.
one thing I've heard from a lawyer is that even if you do the breathalyzer, whether or not what you could ask for is a blood test, and that gives you a chance on the ride there to sober up, hopefully.
Oh yeah. So that I know that heavily varies state to state, but I know in New York, if a cop asks you to do a field sobriety check, because there's no standard operating procedure for that. There's no anything for that. You don't have to basically whether you pass or fail. There is no criteria. So you could be completely sober and you could quote unquote pass the test, and the cop can still. It doesn't even matter because there's no litmus test, if that makes any sense. It's like it's one of those things like, no, I'm not doing field sobriety test, just give me the breathalyzer.
Well, I mean, well, the thing is, like with the breathalyzer and the field sobriety test, because like what they're inaccurate ways of trying to determine whether or not the amount of alcohol in someone's systems and whether or not they are actually impaired. Because my dad, and it kind of transferred to me, but my dad is actually what is it called, a functional drunk or a functional alcoholic or whatever you want to call it, to where he can drink a lot and not act drunk, not look drunk. He can walk straight and everything like that, but he is completely like shit faced almost, and you wouldn't know it until you did a blood test on him and or watch him drink the amount of alcohol he drinks sometimes. Um,
Oh yeah.
but but two questions I want to ask is one, uh, do you? I guess I forget what the second one is, but one of them is like, do you trust cops? Like if a cop was to come up to you or pull you over or anything like that, do you trust them
Well, I trust them to. I
to
trust
do
them
their
as far as
job,
to do their job. That's pretty much it. And that's
but you don't
and
trust
this
them
is
to be a good human?
well, no, not because not all
That's
humans are good.
yeah,
That's pretty loaded.
that's
And
loaded.
yeah, it's like
I know.
yeah. Well,
I
I'm
know
not
it's a loaded
loaded.
question. That's
I'm
why
not
I asked
loaded.
it
But
that way. So
it's
I
sort of like,
apologize.
sir, how high are you? It's like, no, officer. It's hi. How are you?
Yeah. But so what was the answer to trusting cops? So like not necessarily just to their
I
job and that's it.
yeah.
Like
You get. It's like, hey, look. I know you're trying to do your
to follow,
job.
to try to follow their procedures and do the right things.
Yeah, and that's one of those things too. Is that there's a lot of issues with regulating and maintaining. Um, how do you go about it? It's like there's very now I'm not going to say there's very little oversight as if it was like a generalization, but um, the there is no oversight as far as and there's a good John Oliver piece I could cite again where he delves into
John Oliver, the comedian.
Yeah, he has his show last week tonight or last weekend today tonight
I
or
don't
something
like
like that.
John Oliver, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so in one of the things, he goes over a number of instances where, because the police and the prosecutor, or rather the DA or the attorney general, whoever, not the attorney general, but the DA or the prosecutor, they work so hand in hand. Oftentimes, when people so like the way I've always gotten out of traffic tickets is, if I got pulled over for speeding, I take my I happen to have a family friend, so it's not like, you know, it's not like I go to like some random lawyer every time this happens, but take my traffic ticket to my lawyer, and I ask him, hey, what do I do? He's like, here, all you do is you plead not guilty, and I'll take he goes on behalf of me. I pay a fee for it because the way New York works is that any points you get on your license is reported to insurance, and the last thing I need is to pay more for insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically pay him like $200, and even for like a nonsense traffic ticket, that's only worth like 3 points. He goes there, he talks to the DA because he's a lawyer. He knows how to speak lawyer, and I'm not kidding, because like this is one of those things that this is why people.
It is another language.
Yeah, it's why people who quote unquote like to defend themselves. It's like, you're not a lawyer. You're not an expert. You gotta tread carefully, and that's why like people who defend themselves end up losing like.
I have a good bit about
A
that.
lot.
Translates, but
yeah, so it's like, yeah, no, I told my lawyer, go down there. He gets it reduced to a non-moving violation, which is basically just a parking ticket, and I pay no points. I pay him. It's like, it's better to pay a parking ticket and $200 to have a lawyer get rid of those points than me paying like an extra $50 on my insurance per month for the next who knows how many. But when it comes to that, that's kind of why it's like, I don't know where I was going with this. I forgot what my point was because I got distracted. But it was one of those things like, yeah, I'd rather trust an expert. That's why, like, that's why my lawyer tells me, it's like, hey, don't. It's like, just shut the fuck up. That's literally what he says. Is just shut up and don't say anything. And you call me. And if I get here, I've never been arrested, by the way. This is me projecting. And when I get there, when I ask you, did you say anything? And it's like, you better tell me no, and it better be the truth. And it's like, well, the reason why is because if you're ever arrested, you're accused of a crime, whatever crime it is, you're accused of it. And you have to, it's not about you or the cops anymore, because when the cops come to try and grill you, you can't say anything to them. You have to ask for a lawyer. You can't say anything to the cops. And that's as far as I trust them, because if I'm being accused of a crime, the last thing I want to do is implicate myself in any way or give them any reason, give them any ammo. That's what it's about. That's when the
games start too. Hostile. They start playing games with you, trying to like get you to say something to like.
Oh yeah, and they can lie to you left and right. It's like they can say like.
That's the point of being arrested. The extent of what I'm trying to figure out in your case is mainly just an average encounter with a cop, like a traffic violation, or walking on the street and they're looking for somebody and you happen to match their description or whatever.
I don't want to overcomplicate it. It's a lot more casual than I'm making it sound, because it's sort of like, what do you do on a day to day? Well, I get up from bed, I go take a shower, I put on socks.
Panics.
Yeah, no, it's like it's spurring out, and I panic.
Well, I wake up and I masturbate because
I thought of you first. Your face.
But it's one of these. It's just one of those things. Like, yeah, no, you can have casual interactions without it being immediately defensive. Oh, yeah, you think I was speeding? All right, whoops. And I'm not going to admit I was speeding, because that's just one of those things that he's going to write on the ticket. And I've had that happen to me before, where I rolled through a stop sign at like 1 mile an hour, and he stopped me for not completely stopping. And then he's like, oh, you ran the stop sign back there. And I was like, shit, I'm sorry, I rolled through it. And then on the ticket, he said, there's a little spot that says, it says like defendant statement or something like that. It says, I rolled through it. And that's what it says on the ticket. No context, like couple words, I rolled through it. And then like forever, I'll be known as Vlad, I rolled through it, Vladanovsky. But that was like that was one of those things where it's like, yeah, if I didn't say anything, now that was actually a ticket I had to suck it up and pay points for, because there was no real checking no on the not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things like when my lawyer went and he's like, yeah, you told the cop you rolled through it. And I'm like, oh. Like, and it's like, yeah, no, we couldn't scrub that one from you. That sucks.
So it seems to me, because you have a lot of lawyer friends, and I guess people listen like
I have
that.
like
You
I have like one lawyer friend, a family friend happens to be. So
And-
that's my
and you have
advantage.
with
So,
that though, it gives you a certain perception of how to handle yourself with police officers, which is fine. That's
Oh,
fair. That's
yeah.
actually kind of a smart thing. But also, I feel like some of the stuff that you're saying would, even though it wouldn't incriminate you in any way by like not talking or whatever, but I mean, you would still comply to the basic bits of a cop is, interacting with you enough to where, you don't come off as a dick, but not suspicious, kind of thing.
Anything
You're not going to
criminal.
be like, yeah.
Yeah, so this is I'll
Because
send you this
for me,
video.
yeah, but for me, well, also systemic. Do you like same as Vlad? You would still trust cops enough to like do their job and stuff like that, and you wouldn't be a dick to them or anything like that.
I mean,
No,
it's
it's
usually
not about being a dick. Like,
I'm not saying you're a dick, but I'm just saying, like, in the instance of like someone, like if he rolls up and he's like, just saying something like, "Oh, I don't answer questions," that kind of thing. I'm not saying you would do the sovereign citizen thing, but it's hard to make an example with you because it's
you do,
weird,
you
like a
sovereign
weird middle
citizen.
ground. It's a weird middle ground of, but not sovereign citizen, but not full like, oh, I love cops.
oh yeah, that's just one of those things. Like, and I'm trying not to overcomplicate. It's like, no, I don't say things like, no, I don't answer questions. It's more casual with that. And like I said, I've never had a negative interaction with a cop. But it's also one of those things that I know that based on what I've been told from my lawyers is that, hey, if you have an interaction with a cop where he thinks you're drunk, and that's not about traffic tickets. Traffic tickets are way more casual than that. It's like, and by casual, I mean it's a simple interaction. No, I'm not. The first thing I'm not going to say is no. I don't answer questions. But if he says like, hey, if he thinks you're drunk, or he thinks that you have committed a crime, or he's looking for somebody who might have committed a crime, and even if you're completely innocent, you seriously cannot. You invoke your fifth, because you can do that any time. You don't have to be arrested to invoke your fifth. You don't have to be. You might not be a suspect, but you could be. He doesn't have to tell you that you're a suspect. He doesn't have to tell you that you're being investigated. He might be asking for a just a statement, and that's one of those things where he's like, you gotta quell that. You can't talk to them. Now there's certain things you have to do. Like, I have to give him my license, and if he asks for my pistol permit, I have to tell him that I have my pistol. Or
if he asks you to get out of the car, you have to get out.
Yes,
he has the right to force you out.
Yeah, or if you're in a traffic incident, if you're in a traffic stop, you have to show them your registration. You have to show them your insurance. You got to show them your ID. You got to do that.
And you, in the case of a traffic stop, you are detained automatically.
Yeah, but in this case, traffic stops are less. They're less criminalist than I was making out. Because don't try not to confuse this with what I was saying before. But like, as like an overarching criminal thing, a traffic stop is a traffic stop. Like, the worst thing I can get is a ticket.
Yeah.
Right, because that's all it is. It's just a ticket. It's not like, yes, I've technically committed a
depending
crime.
on how nice the cop is and what's going on, what the actual violation was.
Oh yeah, but like the moment he says like, hey, if you ever, because you're a young kid, if he ever tells you to get out of the car, you don't let him. You say no all the time. Don't let him search your car, because myself, I do not gain anything out of him searching my car. He has to get a warrant. But if you let him search, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't. Because he can
and granted,
voluntarily.
I know that yeah. Hello, you stop. Hello.
Oh, sorry. But it's like one of those things. Like, no, you gotta, when he asks you to step out, he's probably accusing you of something way more serious than a traffic ticket. Because DUIs are like really strict in New York. If you get convicted of a DUI, you automatically lose your license for like 6 months or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's very rare for them to ask you out of your car, just unless the fact that you probably show them that you have a carry permit or some kind of gun, and obviously they're going to ask you to get out of the car for their safety, which you should comply to, instead of trying to fight the cop about it, because then you're going to get nervous.
Oh yeah, and it's also one of those things where if say the cop does something I know is blatantly unconstitutional, like say if the cop says he stopped me because I own a pistol, because I own guns, he sees my pistol permit, he says, hey, I have to search you because you have guns, and that's his reasonable suspicion, even though I know that the New York Supreme Court said definitively that you can't just arrest people, or you can't just detain people because they own guns. You can't do that. Even though I know it's like you got to just let it happen and let the lawyers figure it out later. But in the meantime, you don't
Yeah.
say anything. So obviously that's serious, right? If he's asking you to search you, yeah, it's exactly you fight out in court. There's no fighting it there. Don't open your mouth. Don't say like, officer, I can't do that because that's unconstitutional. It's like, no, that's not the time for it because it doesn't matter. That cop can do whatever he wants.
Because I have a question on that. Because you're talking about searching you personally, so doing a frisk, he can't do that.
Well, no. Basically, the reason was there was a guy from Ohio who was driving through New York. This was a couple of years ago, and he when he got stopped, the police officers saw that he and they tried to search his car. And the reason why he searched his car was because they pulled him over for speeding. When they pulled him over for speeding, he handed him his license. Well, in Ohio, I guess when you hand off your license, it says on your driver's license that you're a concealed carry holder or something like that. It's a sticker or it's a special kind of license that is on your driver's license. But whatever it was. So when the cops saw that he was a concealed carry holder, the cop asked him to get out of the car, and I need to search your car because you own guns. Well, that guy fought that all the way to New York Supreme Court. New York Supreme Court says no, being a gun owner is not a reason to search somebody. It's not probable cause. It's not reasonable suspicion or any of that nonsense. That and the reason why I brought that up was because like if a cop asks to do that to you, like, oh hey, oops, excuse me. Well, that's it for me. I doxed myself. Whatever.
Edit that out and delete the VOD.
Woo. Hey, it's like, hey Vlad, if you're a gun owner, I got to search you or search your car or whatever. And even though I know for a fact that that's unconstitutional, I can't do anything about it there because physically there's nothing I can actually do. Like, what's the cop going to do when I tell him that's unconstitutional? He's probably just going to keep doing it. You know what I'm saying?
That's something I was trying to bring up earlier when I was talking about like the first question I asked about would you tell the police officer if you had the gun on you or not if you were at a traffic stop was I think
I'm obligated to say yes in New York. Yeah, if he asks, I have to say.
Oh, I was just gonna
that's
would it be dumb? That's actually the question I was going to ask earlier. Would it be dumb to be outright like like to automatically just hand them the carry permit when they say license registration?
That's what I do.
Yeah, show them the carry permit.
I mean, so if you don't, so this was my whole thing. I was bringing up like an hour ago. I've been trying to wait to bring this up. Was my first experience I think 2 weeks after I got my permit, I went to the gym at 4 a.m. I came back, had the gun on me. I got traffic. I ran through. It was a no turn on red stoplight, and I thought I had beat it. But the guy's like, "Hey, I saw you tried to make that. Didn't quite make that." I was like, "Okay, well, shit, whatever." And I just gotten the permit. So the story I wanted to bring up was I handed my permit and my license over. I'm like, "Hey, so you know, sir, like I have a concealed carry permit. I have my firearm on me. How you want to proceed?" And the guy's like, "Okay, well, step out. We'll put it on the hood or on the top of your car, and we'll go from there. Not a big deal." So he asked me to get out, had my hands on my head and shit, and he like grabbed it. I'm like, hey, where's it at? I'm like, oh, appendix carry. I can put it out. He asked me to, put the holster out and put it on top of the car. I did that, but I'm glad I did it though because he was like, hey, I'm gonna run your license now. Just he took the gun. Sorry, and I got back my car. I was like, hey, sit here. I'm running your license. Not a big deal. Yada yada yada. And he ran my license. And he's like, hey, I'm really glad you gave me your permit because had you had this gun and the permit, I'm back up. The permit was not on my license. So he ran the license and he didn't know that I had a permit. He was like, hey, like this is odd because normally they link to each other, right? Like so you run the license, the permit would show up. So it's hey, this guy has a gun or could have a gun, whatever. Like, hey, so had you had this and you didn't get a permit or couldn't talk to me about this, been arrested. Like, oh well, I'm trying to do everything right, so here's all the stuff. I'm trying to be plain and honest with you, so
Yeah,
And
see,
then
that's
he's
where
always there. It's like, at least out here where I live, they're like really jacked up and they're really gun friendly, like citizens and whatnot. Be like, hey, like thank you for telling me this. You know, it really makes me feel better as a police officer working with you in this traffic stop, which is really tense for us because I'm a cop and like I don't know if you're a bad guy who wants to do harm to me. So like, while you outright coming and saying, hey, I have this, I'm not here to hurt you. What do you want to do to proceed? Just gives him like all the information and knowledge and basically lets him know that you're not a threat to him. You're just about your day and you fucked up on a red light turn. Okay, whatever. That's why I asked, like, would you tell him if you had the firearm or not? Because it puts them, I think, more at ease. Because at least what my interaction was, he was like, "Hey, like, thank you for telling me." Because I would have, been a little more on edge had I found out that, oh, you have a gun but no permit, or a permit but no gun, or whatever. That just made it easier for him. So
Well, that's why I think complying with police officers and being especially upfront about certain things, like, you're carrying a pistol in the car or something like that. Like, hey, or if you have it on you, be like, hey, I got a concealed carry permit and I'm carrying my pistol right now. Just want to let you know. So you yourself aren't nervous because every officer, I'm pretty sure, is in the weird situation. Like, I don't know how this is going to go down, depending on what it is, whether or not they got warrants and things can escalate quickly. It's just better to be forthright with them. And me personally, I'd be more likely to trust cops. Maybe not you, lad, so much, but I at least here, where I live, it's not so bad. I mean, granted, it's more kind of country or whatever, but it's obviously getting a little worse. But that's neither here nor there. Um, but also looking at it, like, yes, a cop could incriminate you. Like, say he pulls you out of the car or whatever and does like a search in your car, whether it be unconstitutional or whatever. I know you can fight that in court, but wouldn't it just be easier to, if they were like, "Hey, we need to search your car," and be like, "Okay, well, I got nothing to hide, so I'll accept it this
that's,
time," and just get it over with instead of having to go all the way to the Supreme Court, spend a bunch of money and trying to fight in court.
that it's context dependent though.
I mean, granted, it'd be very rare for that to happen, but I know that the whole there's probably some kind of demographic, or not demographic, but profiling, blah blah blah. There's little iffy gray areas there for situations like that would happen, but I would be more likely to trust a cop a little bit more as a person, I guess, versus as their job. They should follow the right procedures and whatnot, and try not to dick me over just because they have the power to do so. But I'd rather comply with a cop, make things easy, so we can both go about our day faster than having to like fight through all this shit in court, unless it's warranted. You know?
It's contact. To answer that, it's not really loaded. It's so situationally dependent.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if it was something simple, like the cops is like, well, you match the description of something, of this person. Can we just search your car and just be like, okay?
I can see either.
Would that be a bad thing or?
I can see either way because if something he might find is like suspicious or incriminating, you want to have a defense. So by saying no, get a warrant, and then calling your lawyer about it gives you like the absolute best chance of coming out of that unscathed. It's basically like
And I get
it's
that.
basically risk mitigation. Do you accept the risk and identify that there's not a lot of risk in letting him do this because you do stand nothing to gain, like Vlad said. But at the same time, too, though, it's like for whatever reason he finds something that might be incriminating or suspicious to you, and he detains you and takes you in or whatever the proper terminology is. Okay, now you're in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's purely in principle. There's no reason why I say no, or I would say no. It's just in principle. I would rather force him to prove
Right.
to him that I'm doing something wrong.
Because it's incumbent on them to
giving that up.
It's incumbent upon them to find the proof that you are not innocent, because you're innocent to proven guilty.
And yes, I firmly believe that. And second off, I want to also clarify that I would never let a cop search my vehicle. I was wondering, would that just be like, I know you say it's situational, but I mean, would it really be that bad? And that's what I was trying to figure out. And
No,
yes, it can be.
I mean,
you're right.
There's nothing going on. Yeah, why not? Not a big deal.
You're right. It probably wouldn't be that bad. It might get me out of this traffic stop sooner. He could also really bust my balls about something. He could really, and that's just one of those things. Like, yeah, he could do this. He could do that. It's like, well, I can limit the number of questions he asks me if I don't talk to him, or I can limit the amount of interaction I have with him if I make him try and prove that I am committing a crime. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, I was speeding, all right, but I'm not going to admit to him that I was speeding. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I was going a little fast. I'm just not going to say that, because Like in my case,
But what if you are?
well, no, you're
You just
right,
lied.
but I'm not going to admit that. It's one of those things like, yeah, no, I couldn't get out of a traffic ticket a couple of years ago because I said, oh yeah, I rolled through it. Now, if I said nothing, I probably wouldn't have to
But
pay
you were
that.
in the wrong anyway.
No, you're right, but that's up to him to prove that. That's no, see, like,
Well,
my,
you
You're
saw it.
basically
Doesn't
it's
matter.
no, it's
Yeah.
again,
Like
it's
one of the
risk
things, like-
mitigation. So
Yeah.
is it the more interaction you have, the more opportunity for that risk to bite you in the ass, where you fuck up and say something that incriminates you, like Vlad did with his traffic ticket. or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. But
and
the
that's- and
thing
that's
is,
why,
though,
like-
So like if for some reason like you, I don't know what the hell example is. I don't do bad things, so I don't have good examples. But like if you are trolling for a traffic stop and he somehow finds like weed or something in your car, or I don't know, like okay, how about this? We're all gun enthusiasts here, right? So let's say okay, your traffic stop, you ask for your car, you say yes. He goes in the back, finds a random 9mm round you missed from your range day yesterday. Is that
Mhm.
incriminating? I don't know. Maybe depends what you're looking for. So now it's like, hey, why is there a bullet in your car? Okay, now that opens the door. The risk, you accepted the risk and took responsibility for it. Now the opportunity has been taken, and he by chance found this round. So now he's asking you questions about it. Now you're in the situation where if you said no, and he backed off, it's okay, whatever, not a big deal, and moves on. That
Mhm.
situation never presents its face ever.
Yep. But with that though, in that situation, say something you do to that and let that cop do that, and he does ask you that question. Vlad, I want your opinion on this because because you
Fucking
would
criminal.
say you don't plead the fifth, but like when you plead the fifth, like what if he asks you like, so I found a random 9mm in your back seat. Can you explain why that is? And it's like, well, at that point you say, what do? You just say, I'm not answering any further questions. I need a lawyer.
Jeff.
well, it's like you don't at that point you don't even say things like I don't know, because if he proves that you do, and this is more like a court thing. In
Or
that
would you
video,
just
I
not
sent
say
you,
anything? I need a lawyer.
I'm gonna talk to my
yeah,
lawyer.
and this is kind of where it's like,
traveling, officer. Why are you pulling me over?
this is kind of where, like I said, I've never been in this situation, so I can only say I can only really do what my lawyers told me to do, which is I say nothing, and yeah, and you can say things like I invoke the fifth, or I have the right to remain silent, and I want my lawyer. You can say all those things. Now, how casually you go about it or whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt you in any way. But it's like, yeah, okay, if he found like a random 9, you're right. It could be as simple as, oh, that looks like an expended shell from when I went to the range. And I could have these small talk interactions because 99% of the time, it's probably going to be a mere curiosity, a small blip on the radar. It'll all go under the table, and it'll never come around. It's very likely that'll never
Is that
happen.
1% though that'll bite you in the ass? Or you end up in jail.
Well, that's
Well,
where the risk
kinda,
mitigation
'cause-
and acceptance thing comes in.
Well, kind of, because the cop could give me a lot of, he could give me a lot of shit over having a 9mm, even though there's nothing illegal about it. He really could. He could give me a lot of shit over having a pistol permit. He could give me a lot of shit about. He could make a. It's like there's not even a law. Like if I have my ammo in the car, so long as it's in my trunk, there's no issue. However, he could give me a lot of shit for not having the ammo locked up or something, or not.
That's true because
I don't know. It's like
it's a little
because
different than here because there is no like you have to have ammo, or at least as far as I know that like we get because like for me, I can have my ammo next to my guns locked into a safe or whatever. It doesn't have to be like separated or anything weird. There's no capacity limits or anything like that. I mean, it's Georgia. Everyone owns a gun pretty much almost. So, the what was I gonna say? Because granted, like I said, I would never. It's very rare that would happen, and it'd be very tough to decide on that situation. But the only thing I can base myself off, kind of like what's going on, is like one of the instances where I had. Now this doesn't involve guns, but I was at a party at my friend's house down the road, and uh, I kind of just curious about you. Want to say like, is there area I could have plead a fifth or something? But granted, I was a little dick to the cop, so he had full reason to kind of be a dick back to me. But I was leaving the party. My friend wanted to walk me out. And what happened was there was cops roaming around my neighborhood in other areas near where I live because there was a big house party or something going on to where you could hear the music for miles almost. Like it was fucking loud. And the cops were roaming the area because there's like sound complaints and whatnot. They're trying to find the party. And as my friend walked me out, that's one of the things she asked, like, "Hey, officers, like, how y'all having a good night?" And like, yeah. He's like, is there something going on? Like, why is everybody out? I was like, well, we're looking for, there's a sound ordinance going on. I don't know if y'all can hear it, but there's a party somewhere. We're trying to find it. Shut it down. And it's like, oh, okay. And then I said bye to my friend. I started walking to my car, and the cops are walking in front of me. Just walking, not saying anything. Everything's quiet. And then kind of cop looks back, and he's like, y'all having a good night? And I was like, yes, yeah, officer. Just having a little get together. He's like, okay. Is anybody drinking at the party? And we're all underage at this point, and this is where I was a bit of a dick, and I was just like, no, officers, why would we do that?
Mm.
And he flipped a fucking switch, got in my face, and he's like, you're not going to disrespect me, boy. You're going to talk to me and respect me. And they got up all in my face, and I'm like, I'm sorry, officer. You know, I didn't mean to be a smart ass or anything, even though I did. And he told me, I need, like, breathe for me. And I was like, what? He's like, breathe for me. I was like, he goes, faint, come with me. I was like, shit. And the funny thing is, I had a beer mixed with oh god, I hate to admit this because it was so stupid, but I mixed it with a soda because it was hot as fuck, and I was trying to get some ice on it, and it was tasting bad. And anyway,
Disgusting.
it was disgusting, but it was all I had. We were young and dumb and didn't know, like, we couldn't buy shit for ourselves. So anyway, he pulls me to the car, and I eventually get breathalyzed. And because he's like, have you been drinking? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay, we're going to breathalyze you. We're going to find out if you're telling the truth or not. And I blow the breathalyzer, and I came out 0. And he's like, oh, it looks like we got somebody telling the truth here. Now, granted, he was having his fun with me because I was a young kid being a smart ass. Is there anything in that situation where I could have been like, no, officer, I plead the fifth?
Well, yeah, you probably could have. You probably could have when he asked you. Now, granted, this is probably lying, but it would have gotten out. Was that, hey,
I mean, here you lied
anybody
anyway.
been drinking? And you're just like, oh, I don't know, or something like that. I didn't see any. Or granted, you could lie. You could lie and get out of it. That's what could have happened. I mean,
I could probably just be like, no, officer, we're good kids. We don't do that kind of crazy crap.
yeah, you could. Or you could have said, like, well,
But then he might have given, like, really?
You could have said something like, well, I wasn't drinking. And then.
But then I would incriminate my friends.
You're right. And that's kind of where it's like.
Well, he probably asked you the underage.
Yeah.
And at that point, that's where the critical thing is. If you say no, then they say, okay, let's go knock on the door again. And then they say, hey, give me your ID.
Well, what's also funny is that
there's probable cause, and then there's.
Because my friend was like, we're having a little bonfire, just get together with a bunch of friends. And he's like, anybody drinking at the party? And I was like, no, officer. And he's like, okay. And he went on about his day. But then I got asked again, but I made the smart ass comment because he's asking me personally again. And I was just like, no, officer, why would we do that? And he got fucking pissed. So, but no, I just want to bring that up because, like,
punk ass
that's
kid.
where, like, if had I just been like, no, officer, and just kind of complied and whatever, we could have easily gone about my day, and I wouldn't have to get breathalyzed and almost taken to jail for being underage. But because luckily I pumped out a 0 and, you know, could go about my day. But that's just where I feel like more people should comply with cops to an extent. I still agree with you that if they want to search your vehicle without a warrant, it is unwarranted, so they shouldn't do it. And things like that, and be careful about what you say because they can incriminate you. But I feel like, you know, just being straight with an officer can also help just stop a bunch of headaches. You know, that's just me. Now, do we want to finish up with Mars colonization, or do we just want to end on a joke or something?
We're on 3 hours, so we should probably just end it.
Yeah. So either way, I love cops and think people should care more about gun safety and violent games and movies and videos, and music does not cause violence or cause violent people.
Well, I don't know, man. Kisses.
Male genitalia, and they indoctrinate and make a cult, and everybody's going around painting their faces and looking like dumbasses.
Male genitalia everywhere. Oh my god.
Mm-hmm. How dare Elvis strut his knees like that?
Ooh.
It's enticing the female population, making them hot and bothered.
Well,
so any closing notes on you, Vlad? Anything else you want to say?
Row, fight the power.
Sovereign citizens unite.
Yep, that's right. If you ever talk to a cop, you shut the fuck up. And Drink more Ovaltine. Yep, there you go.
Wow, that's an old one.
417. We need donut operator here. Stat.